The forest was alive with something that wanted her dead. Kira ran. Her bare feet split against frozen roots and jagged stones, leaving threads of crimson in the snow behind her. The cold bit into her lungs with every desperate breath, ice forming on her lips, frost crystallizing on her eyelashes like the tears she refused to shed. The trees around her were not trees anymore. They were witnesses. Ancient, black-barked sentinels rising from the earth like the ribcage of some great beast, their branches twisted toward a sky that had forgotten the sun. And somewhere behind her, in the throat of the darkness, something was hunting. Not running. Hunting. She could feel it in the way the air pressure changed, in the way the wind suddenly stilled as if the entire world had drawn a breath and held it. She could feel it in her bones, in the marrow, in the space between her heartbeats where instinct screamed louder than logic. Run faster. It doesn't matter. Nothing can outrun what's coming. The moon hung low and swollen above the canopy, bleeding crimson light through the skeletal branches. A blood moon. The old women in her village used to whisper about nights like this, nights when the boundary between worlds grew thin, when the spirits of the damned walked freely, when wolves born of shadow and sin prowled the earth searching for the souls they were owed. Kira had always thought those stories were meant to frighten children. She wasn't a child anymore, and she was more frightened than she had ever been in her entire life. Her foot caught on a gnarled root, and she went down hard, palms slamming into the frozen earth, knees cracking against stone buried beneath the snow. Pain lanced up through her wrists, bright and sharp, but she didn't scream. She couldn't. Sound was a death sentence out here. Sound was a beacon. Sound was an invitation to whatever was tracking her through these cursed woods. She scrambled forward on her hands and knees for 3 desperate seconds before forcing herself upright again. Her nightgown, that thin, pathetic scrap of cotton she had been wearing when she woke up in the clearing with no memory of how she got there, was soaked through with snow and sweat and something else. Something dark that stained the fabric at her sleeves. Blood. Her blood. She glanced down at her arms as she ran, and even in the dim crimson light of the bleeding moon, she could see them. Claw marks. 3 perfect lines carved into the flesh of each forearm, running from her wrists to her elbows. The wounds weren't fresh. They had already begun to scab, the edges puckered and pink as if they were hours old. But Kira didn't remember getting them. She didn't remember anything from the hours before she woke up in that clearing, face down in the snow, her mouth tasting like copper and ash. The last thing she remembered was her bed, her village, the sound of screaming. And then nothing. A void where memory should be. A black hole in the center of her mind that swallowed everything she tried to retrieve. What happened to me? What am I running from? What did I do? The questions burned in her skull like fever, but there was no time to answer them. There was only the next step. The next breath. The next second of survival before whatever was chasing her finally caught up. Behind her, the forest groaned. Not the wind. Not the trees. Something deeper. Something older. A sound that seemed to rise from the very roots of the earth, vibrating through the frozen ground and up into her bones. Kira's heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought it might shatter them. She had heard that sound before. In her nightmares. In the dreams she woke from screaming, drenched in sweat, unable to remember anything except the feeling of teeth at her throat and the weight of something massive and dark pressing her into the earth. The sound came again, closer now. A low, rumbling growl that wasn't quite a growl. It was deeper than that. More primal. It was the sound of hunger given voice. The sound of rage distilled into vibration. It was the promise of violence wrapped in animal instinct, and it was coming for her. Kira pushed harder. Her muscles burned. Her lungs screamed. The cold had numbed her feet so completely that she could no longer feel the cuts and scrapes, could no longer feel the blood leaving her body one step at a time. She was running on pure terror now, on the ancient survival instinct that lived in the deepest, most primitive part of her brain. Don't look back. Whatever you do, don't look back. But even as she thought it, even as every fiber of her being screamed at her to keep her eyes forward, she felt her head begin to turn. She couldn't stop it. Something was pulling at her, not physically, but deeper. Something in the darkness behind her was reaching into her mind, into that black void where her memory should be, and tugging, demanding her attention, commanding her to witness. Her head turned, and she saw it. The creature emerged from the shadows between the trees like it was made of them, darkness given form, nightmare given flesh. It was massive, larger than any wolf she had ever seen or imagined. Its shoulders stood level with her chest, its body a rippling mass of black muscle and silver-streaked fur that seemed to absorb the crimson moonlight rather than reflect it. But it was the eyes that froze her blood in her veins. They burned. Not metaphorically, not poetically. They literally burned, twin points of molten gold that carved through the darkness like heated blades. And in those eyes, Kira saw something that made her forget how to breathe. Recognition. The beast knew her. It had been looking for her. And now, at last, it had found her. For a single, crystalline moment, time suspended itself. Kira stood there in the snow, her chest heaving, her blood dripping from her fingertips, her entire body trembling with exhaustion and terror and something else. Something she didn't have a name for. Something that felt almost like anticipation. The creature didn't move. Neither did she. The world held its breath. And then, slowly, impossibly, words began to form in her mind. Not spoken. Not heard. But felt, carved directly into her consciousness like a blade dragging across stone. You. Finally. After all these years. You. Kira's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her throat had closed. Her voice had abandoned her. All she could do was stand there, frozen, as the creature took a single, deliberate step toward her. I've been hunting you for 300 years. The thought hit her like a physical blow, and she staggered backward, her heel catching on a stone. She went down again, hard this time, her spine slamming against a fallen log, the impact driving the air from her lungs in a single, sharp gasp. The beast kept coming. Its massive paws left no prints in the snow. Its breath didn't mist in the frozen air. It moved like smoke, like shadow, like something that existed halfway between the physical world and somewhere else. Somewhere darker. Somewhere that Kira's mind refused to fully comprehend. 300 years, the voice continued, and now Kira realized it wasn't just in her mind, it was everywhere. In the trees. In the earth. In the marrow of her bones. 300 years of hunting. Of searching. Of losing pieces of myself under every cursed moon while I waited for you to finally appear. And now here you are. The one without a scent. The one who can break the chains. The one who can finally set me free. Kira's back pressed against the log behind her. There was nowhere left to run. The creature was close enough now that she could see the individual hairs in its silver-streaked coat, could see the way the muscles rippled beneath its skin with every slow, predatory step. It was beautiful. The thought came unbidden, shocking her with its clarity. Even in her terror, even with death staring at her from those burning golden eyes, some part of Kira recognized the terrible, devastating beauty of the thing standing before her. It was like looking at a storm. Like watching lightning strike the earth from a distance. Magnificent and deadly in equal measure. The beast stopped less than 3 feet away. Its head lowered. Those molten eyes locked with hers. Tell me your name. The command slammed through her with the force of a physical impact, and Kira felt her lips moving before she could stop them. Wait. Her jaw clenched. Her teeth ground together. Something in the deepest part of her, something she didn't know she had, rose up against the compulsion like a wall. No. The word echoed through her mind, and for a moment, she saw something flicker in those golden eyes. Surprise. Confusion. Something that might have been fear? Impossible, the voice whispered, and this time it was softer. Almost uncertain. No human can resist the command of an alpha. No mortal throat has ever denied my will. What are you? Kira stared up at the creature, her chest heaving, her blood singing with a strange, terrible energy that she didn't understand. The wounds on her arms, those perfect, parallel claw marks, had begun to burn. Not the cold burn of infection, but something else. Something that felt almost like fire. I don't know, she thought, not even realizing she was projecting the words until she felt them leave her mind. I don't know what I am. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know why you've been hunting me. I don't know anything anymore. The beast went still. Utterly, completely still. Not like an animal freezing before an attack. Like something ancient and broken, trying to process information that didn't fit into its understanding of the world. You don't know? You aren't here to end this? You aren't here to break the curse? You aren't one of them? Kira's brow furrowed. One of who? But before she could form the question, before she could demand answers from this nightmare creature that had chased her through frozen hell, something else cut through the darkness. A howl. No, not a howl. A chorus. Dozens of voices rising in unison from somewhere in the forest, somewhere close. The sound was haunting, beautiful, and absolutely terrifying. It was the sound of a pack on the hunt. The sound of predators who had found their prey. And they were coming. The beast's head snapped toward the sound, those golden eyes narrowing, and for the first time since it had appeared, Kira saw something other than hunger in its expression. Rage. Pure, undiluted, ancient rage. They found us, the voice snarled through her mind, and now it wasn't calm anymore. Now it was fire and fury and the promise of violence. The dissenters. The betrayers. They followed the blood trail. Your blood trail. The creature's gaze snapped back to her, and Kira felt her heart stop. Get up. She didn't move. Get up. The command hit her like a physical force this time, and despite everything, despite her terror, despite her exhaustion, despite the fact that every instinct screamed at her to stay as far away from this creature as possible, she found herself rising. Her legs trembled beneath her. Her arms hung at her sides, the claw marks burning brighter now, the blood on her skin beginning to steam in the frozen air. The beast moved closer, so close that she could feel the heat radiating from its massive body despite the cold. Its breath ghosted across her face, warm and wild and carrying a scent that made something deep inside her clench with a longing she didn't understand. You can't die here. Not tonight. Not before I know the truth. Not before I understand what you are and why the curse sings when you're near. A sound escaped Kira's throat, something between a laugh and a sob. I don't know what any of that means. I don't know what curse you're talking about. I don't know why I can hear you in my head. I just want to go home. I just want to wake up from this nightmare. I just want. The creature's body shifted. 1 second it was standing before her, a massive, terrifying beast of shadow and silver. The next, the darkness was twisting, reshaping, collapsing inward like a star dying and being reborn. And then a man was standing in its place. A man who was very much not human. He was tall, impossibly tall, towering over her by more than a foot. His skin was pale, marked with black veins that traced patterns across his chest and throat like cracks in porcelain. His hair fell past his shoulders in waves of deepest black, shot through with strands of silver that caught the crimson moonlight like threads of starlight. But it was his face that stole the breath from her lungs. Beautiful, devastating, and utterly, completely broken. His features were sharp, high cheekbones, a strong jaw, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile centuries ago. But his eyes, those same burning golden eyes remained, and in them, Kira saw something that made her chest ache in ways she didn't understand. Pain. So much pain. Centuries of it, layered and compressed and crystallized into something that had become indistinguishable from the soul itself. The man, the beast, the creature that had hunted her through the frozen forest reached out. His fingers brushed against the claw marks on her arm. And the moment his skin touched hers, the world exploded. Visions slammed into her consciousness with the force of a collapsing mountain. She saw fire, an inferno consuming a village while figures screamed in the darkness. She saw blood, rivers of it, staining the snow crimson beneath a moon exactly like the one hanging above them now. She saw a woman with hair like starlight and eyes like storm clouds, her lips moving in words Kira couldn't hear, her hands raised toward a figure that writhed and screamed as chains of shadow wrapped around its body. "You are bound." The woman's voice echoed through the vision, ancient and terrible and filled with grief. "You are bound by blood and betrayal. You are bound until the last of our line forgives what cannot be forgiven. You are bound until the scentless one speaks your name. And you are bound to kill the one thing that can save you. This is your curse. This is your eternity. This is your hell." The vision shattered. Kira gasped, her knees buckling, and the man caught her before she hit the ground. His arms were like iron bands around her waist, impossibly strong, impossibly warm despite the cold. His voice, his real voice, not the one in her mind, was a low, ragged rasp. Draven. That was his name. She knew it without being told. She knew it the same way she knew that the wounds on her arms weren't random. The same way she knew that this forest wasn't just a forest. The same way she knew that she was in the middle of something ancient and terrible and far, far bigger than one girl running for her life. The Alpha of the Nightbane Pack. The Dark Alpha. The monster that had lived in the shadows of human nightmares for 300 years. And he was staring at her like she was the first thing he had seen clearly in centuries. His lips moved. One word. A question. A prayer. A condemnation. "What are you?" And Kira, who had no memory, no understanding, no power that she recognized, stared back at him with blood on her hands and fire in her veins, and said the only thing that was true. "I don't know. But I think you're going to help me find out." The howls grew closer. The blood moon hung heavy above them. And somewhere in the darkness of the forest, in the place where memory and destiny intertwined, something ancient stirred. Something that had been waiting for this moment for 300 years. Something that knew what Kira didn't. That the curse had finally found its key. And that by morning, one of them would be forever changed, and the other might not survive at all. If this story has already sunk its claws into you, if you can feel the pull of this darkness, if you need to know what happens when the curse meets its key, then do yourself a favor. Hit that subscribe button and join Shayla's romance library. Because this tale is just beginning, and trust me, you're going to want to be here when the truth is finally revealed. The howls were closer now. Close enough that Kira could hear individual voices within the chorus, deep, guttural growls layered beneath the higher, keening wails. Close enough that she could feel the vibration of dozens of paws thundering against the frozen earth, shaking the ground beneath her bare, bleeding feet. But she couldn't move. Draven's arms were still wrapped around her waist, holding her upright, holding her steady, holding her in place as if she were something precious and dangerous in equal measure. His skin burned against hers despite the bitter cold, radiating a heat that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than flesh and bone. From somewhere ancient. From the curse itself, maybe, or from whatever remained of his soul after 3 centuries of damnation. His golden eyes hadn't left her face. Not once. Not even when the howls grew loud enough to drown out the wind. Kira stared back at him, her breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps, her heart slamming against her ribs with enough force to bruise. Up close, in the bleeding light of the blood moon, the Alpha of the Nightbane Pack was even more devastating than she had first realized. His features were carved from shadow and starlight, sharp angles and hard planes that spoke of a beauty too severe to be called handsome. His cheekbones could cut glass. His jaw was a blade wrapped in pale flesh. His mouth was a cruel line that looked like it had been designed for violence, for commands, for the kind of words that broke kingdoms and shattered hearts. But it was the cracks that held her attention. Not physical cracks. Nothing she could touch. But they were there all the same, visible in the slight tremor of his hands against her waist, in the way his breathing wasn't quite steady, in the darkness that swirled behind those burning golden eyes like smoke trapped in amber. This was not a man who had survived 300 years intact. This was a man who had been broken and reformed so many times that the pieces no longer fit together the way they were supposed to. A man held together by will and rage and something else, something that felt almost like hope, fragile and terrible and aimed directly at her. At Kira. At the human girl who didn't know what she was. The girl who had woken up in the snow with claw marks on her arms and a void where her memory should be. The girl who could apparently resist the command of an alpha, something that, according to every piece of wolf lore she had ever heard whispered around village fires, should have been absolutely impossible. One of those whispered legends surfaced now, floating up through the terror and confusion like a bubble rising through dark water. The alpha's command is absolute. No wolf can resist it. No human can hear it. Only the dead are beyond its reach. But Kira had heard it. She had felt it slam against her mind like a battering ram against a castle gate. And she had said no. What did that make her? The howls crescendoed, and Draven's head finally snapped toward the sound. His arms tightened around her, not painfully, but with a possessiveness that made something low in her belly clench. His lips pulled back from his teeth, and for a moment, Kira saw the beast lurking beneath the man. Saw the monster that had hunted her through the frozen forest. Saw the predator that had terrorized the dark places of the world for 300 years. And still, impossibly, inexplicably, she wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of what was coming, but not of him. Something in the depths of her soul, in that place where instinct lived and whispered and knew things that the conscious mind couldn't access, recognized Draven. Not as a threat. Not as an enemy. As something else. Something she didn't have a name for yet. The tree line to the east exploded with movement. Wolves poured from the darkness like a living flood, dozens of them, their pelts ranging from ash gray to midnight black to the deep russet of dried blood. They were smaller than Draven's beast form, but not by much. Their eyes burned with the same golden fire, their bodies rippled with the same supernatural muscle, their movements carried the same inhuman grace that spoke of something far older and far more dangerous than any natural animal. They formed a half-circle at the edge of the clearing, their ranks tightening, their growls building into a wall of sound that pressed against Kira's skull like physical pressure. And then, from the center of the formation, a new figure emerged. He was almost as tall as Draven, but where the dark alpha was carved from shadow and silver, this wolf was fire and blood. His human form was broader, more heavily muscled, with skin the color of burnished copper and hair cropped close to his skull. Scars crossed his face in a pattern that looked almost ceremonial, 3 parallel lines running from his left temple to his jaw, mirror images of the wounds on Kira's arms. His eyes were not gold. They were red. The deep, terrible crimson of fresh spilled blood, and they fixed on Draven with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. The air between the two alphas crackled with tension, invisible lightning arcing between them, making the hair on Kira's arms stand on end. She could feel the power rolling off both of them in waves, ancient and vast and fundamentally incompatible. Like 2 storms colliding. Like 2 continents grinding against each other at the fault line. The scarred alpha's lips curled into something that was more snarl than smile. Kira didn't need to hear his words to understand what was happening. This was a challenge. This was a reckoning. This was a moment that had been building for a very, very long time. Draven shifted his body, angling himself between Kira and the newcomer with a protectiveness that seemed to surprise even him. His hands released her waist, but only so he could push her gently but firmly behind him, placing his own body as a shield between her and the gathered wolves. The scarred alpha's eyes tracked the movement, and something flickered in those crimson depths. Interest. Hunger. Recognition. His gaze slid past Draven and locked onto Kira with an intensity that made her blood run cold. She felt herself being assessed, measured, weighed against some internal scale that she couldn't see or understand. And whatever conclusion the scarred alpha reached, it made the cruel smile on his face widen into something truly terrifying. The gathered wolves shifted, their growls rising in pitch. Draven's voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk, low, commanding, absolutely devoid of the uncertainty she had sensed in him moments before. The words weren't meant for her. They were aimed at the scarred alpha, at the challenge he represented, at the threat he posed to whatever fragile hope had bloomed in Draven's ancient, broken heart. But Kira heard them anyway, felt them resonate in her bones, in her blood, in the claw marks on her arms that had started burning again, brighter now, hotter, as if responding to the tension crackling through the air. Stand down, Cashin. This is not your hunt. This is not your territory. And she is not your concern. The scarred alpha, Cashin, threw back his head and laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It was the sound of something broken pretending to be whole. The sound of rage wearing the mask of amusement. The sound of a man who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time and was finally going to taste the victory he believed he was owed. The wolves around him shifted again, their formation tightening, their bodies coiling with barely restrained violence. Kira's heart hammered against her ribs. She was going to die here. She was going to die in this frozen clearing under a blood-red moon, surrounded by creatures that should not exist, without ever understanding what she was or why any of this was happening. The thought should have terrified her. And it did, partly. But beneath the terror, something else was stirring. Something that had been dormant for so long she had forgotten it existed. Something that felt like fire. Draven must have sensed it, because his head turned slightly, just enough for her to see his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his golden eyes flickered with something that might have been surprise or concern or something else entirely. Don't. The word appeared in her mind like before, carved directly into her consciousness, bypassing her ears entirely. Whatever you're feeling, whatever is waking up inside you, don't let it surface. Not here. Not now. Not in front of him. He's looking for proof. Don't give it to him. Kira's fingers curled into fists at her sides. Proof of what? But Draven didn't answer. His attention had already snapped back to Cashin, who had taken a single, deliberate step forward. The snow crunched beneath his bare feet. Unlike Draven, this alpha seemed to relish the cold, seemed to draw strength from the frozen earth and the bitter wind. The distance between them shrank. 20 feet. 15. 10. The gathered wolves fell silent. The forest held its breath. And then Cashin spoke, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate the very air. His words were not projected into Kira's mind the way Draven's were. They were spoken aloud, meant for everyone present to hear. Meant to wound. Meant to challenge. Meant to drag into the light every secret that Draven had been keeping. The accusations landed like physical blows. Traitor. Oathbreaker. Kinslayer. You think we don't know what you did, Draven? You think we don't remember the blood that stained these woods 3 centuries ago? You think we've forgotten the screams of our ancestors as they burned? Draven's body went rigid. Kira felt the change in him even from behind, the way his muscles locked, the way his breathing stopped, the way the heat radiating from his skin suddenly spiked hot enough to make the snow around his feet begin to melt. You hunted them like animals, Cashin continued, his crimson eyes blazing. The Ashwood Coven. The last of the witches. Women and children, Draven. You tore through their village like a force of nature. You didn't stop until every single one of them was dead. Well, almost everyone. His gaze slid to Kira again, and this time, the hunger in his eyes was unmistakable. You missed one, didn't you? Somehow, impossibly, one of them survived. One of them escaped the massacre and passed their bloodline on. And now, 300 years later, here she stands. The last descendant of the witches who cursed you. The only living member of the bloodline that can break your chains. And you. Cashin's smile turned savage. You have no idea what to do with her. Do you kill her and hope that ends the curse? Do you protect her and hope she chooses to save you? Do you fall to your knees and beg for the forgiveness of a woman whose entire family you slaughtered? Tell me, Dark Alpha, what's your plan? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're just as lost as you were 300 years ago. Just as broken. Just as damned. Just as deserving of every moment of suffering that curse has brought you. Silence fell. Heavy. Crushing. Absolute. Kira couldn't breathe. The words echoed through her skull, rearranging everything she thought she knew, shattering the fragile framework of understanding she had been trying to build. You slaughtered her family. The witches who cursed you. You killed them all. Her family. Her ancestors. Her blood. She stared at Draven's back, at the tension in his shoulders, at the way his hands had curled into fists so tight his knuckles had gone white, at the barely perceptible tremor running through his entire body. He hadn't denied it. Not a single word of denial had left his lips. Because it was true. The monster who had haunted her dreams, who had chased her through the frozen forest, who had held her in his arms with something that felt almost like tenderness. He had killed her family. He had butchered her ancestors. He had drenched his hands in the blood of the very people whose power now flowed through her veins. And he hadn't even remembered it. I'm the monster who slaughtered her family without remembering it. The words from the vision slammed back into her consciousness, and suddenly, everything clicked into place with horrible, devastating clarity. The curse wasn't just punishment. It was erasure. Whatever Draven had done 3 centuries ago, whatever had driven him to hunt the witches, whatever had turned him into the instrument of their destruction, the curse had taken those memories from him, had locked them away behind walls of shadow and suffering, had forced him to live with the consequences of his actions without ever truly understanding what those actions were. He was a monster who didn't know he was a monster, a killer who couldn't remember his crimes. A damned soul searching for salvation without understanding what he needed to be saved from. And Kira. Kira was the key. The last descendant. The only one who could break the curse, or destroy him forever. The fire in her veins flared brighter, hotter, and this time she couldn't suppress it. This time, it rose up through her blood like a tide, racing through her arteries and capillaries, pulling in the center of her chest like a sun being born in the space behind her ribs. The claw marks on her arms split open. Not blood this time. Light. Silver light, pouring from the wounds like liquid starfire, illuminating the clearing in a wash of cold radiance that made even the blood moons seem dim. Every wolf in the clearing went still. Cashin's crimson eyes widened. And Draven. Draven turned. His face was a mask of conflicting emotions, hope and fear and desperation and something else, something deeper, something that looked almost like recognition. Like he had seen this light before. Like it had haunted his dreams the same way he had haunted hers. His golden eyes met her silver ones, because her eyes were silver now, she realized, glowing with the same cold fire that poured from her wounds, and for a single, eternal moment, the world fell away. There was only him. Only her. Only the impossible connection that stretched between them like a thread of fate, binding them together across centuries of blood and pain and darkness. I know you. The thought was his, projected into her mind with a desperation that made her chest ache. I don't remember how. I don't remember why. But I know you. My soul knows yours. And it's been calling out for you for 300 years. Please. Please don't fear me. Please don't hate me. Whatever I did, whatever crime I committed that bound us together, I would undo it if I could. I would take back every moment of suffering, every drop of blood, every scream that echoed through those burning woods. But I can't. All I can do is stand here. All I can do is beg for the chance to make it right. All I can do is hope that somewhere, in the depths of your beautiful, terrifying soul, there's room for mercy. For forgiveness. For me. The silver light flared brighter. Cashin shouted something, a command, an order, and the wolves around him surged forward. But Draven was faster. His body exploded into motion, shifting mid-stride, and suddenly the massive black beast was there again, shadow and silver, muscle and fury, those burning golden eyes fixed on the attacking wolves with a rage that transcended anything human. He met the first wave like a force of nature. Bodies flew. Blood sprayed. The night filled with snarls and screams and the horrible, meaty sound of flesh being torn from bone. And Kira stood in the center of it all, frozen, burning, watching as the monster who had slaughtered her ancestors fought to protect the last of their line. The irony was not lost on her. Neither was the truth. Whatever Draven had done 3 centuries ago, whatever sins stained his soul, whatever blood marked his hands, he was fighting for her now. He was putting his body between her and death. He was choosing her over his own kind, over the wolves who had come to claim her, over the safety that cooperation might have brought him. He was choosing her. And some part of Kira, the part that remembered the warmth of his arms around her, the desperation in his voice when he begged for mercy, the recognition that had blazed in his eyes when they met hers. That part of her was choosing him too. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But something. A chance. A beginning. A single, fragile thread of connection in a world that was trying very hard to tear them both apart. The battle raged around her. Draven fought like something born from nightmare, all claws and fangs and brutal, devastating power. He moved through the attacking wolves like a shadow through candlelight, leaving broken bodies and shattered hopes in his wake. But there were too many of them. Even she could see that. For every wolf he struck down, 2 more took its place. For every enemy he killed, 3 more joined the fight. The clearing was becoming a charnel house, the snow stained crimson with blood, the air thick with the copper tang of violence. And Cashin hadn't moved. The scarred alpha stood at the edge of the carnage, his crimson eyes fixed on Kira, that terrible smile still playing at the corners of his lips. He's waiting. The realization struck her like a thunderbolt. He's not trying to kill Draven. He's trying to exhaust him, wearing him down, weakening him. And when Draven can't fight anymore, her gaze snapped to Cashin, and she saw the truth written in his blood-red eyes. He's going to take me. Not kill her. Take her. Because if Kira was the key to breaking Draven's curse, then she was valuable. More valuable than gold or territory or power. She was the leverage that could bring the Dark Alpha to his knees. She was the weapon that could finally destroy the monster who had terrorized the wolf packs for 300 years. And Cashin knew it. He had known it from the moment he saw her. The silver light in Kira's veins burned brighter. The fire in her chest expanded. And for the first time in her life, for the first time since she had woken up in that clearing with no memory and no understanding and no idea who or what she really was, Kira made a choice. She stepped forward. The wolves around her froze. The battle stuttered. Draven's head snapped toward her, those golden eyes wide with horror and hope in equal measure. Kira raised her hands, those blood-stained, light-bleeding, impossible hands, and spoke. Not words. Something older. Something that had been sleeping in her blood for 300 years, waiting for this moment, waiting for her to finally accept what she was. The sound that left her throat was not human. It was the voice of the witches who had cursed Draven. It was the cry of the women who had died in flames. It was the scream of a bloodline that refused to be silenced. And it split the night like a blade made of pure, devastating light. The attacking wolves scattered. The trees bent. The earth cracked. And Cashin, for the first time since he had emerged from the forest, looked afraid. The silver light exploded outward from Kira's body in a wave, washing over the clearing, washing over the wolves, washing over Draven where he stood frozen in his beast form. And when it faded, when the light dimmed and the world stopped shaking and the echoes of that terrible, beautiful sound finally died away, Kira collapsed. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Draven. Human again. Running toward her. his face twisted with an emotion she couldn't name, his arms reaching for her. His voice, his real voice, raw and ragged and broken, calling out a single word. Please, please don't leave me. Not when I finally found you. Not when I finally found hope. Please. And then there was nothing. Only darkness. Only silence. Only the feeling of falling into something vast and ancient and utterly unknown. But even in that darkness, even in that endless, consuming void, Kira felt something. A presence. A warmth. A heartbeat that wasn't hers, pounding in perfect rhythm with her own. I've got you. Draven's voice echoed through the emptiness. I've got you, and I'm not letting go. Not now. Not ever. Whatever we are to each other, whatever blood and destiny and curse have bound us together. You're mine now. And I protect what's mine. Even from myself. Kira dreamed of fire. It was always fire. Ever since she was a child, ever since those first terrible nightmares had begun clawing their way into her sleeping mind, the flames had been there. Waiting for her. Hungry for her. Reaching out with fingers of orange and gold to drag her down into memories she didn't know she possessed. Tonight, the fire was everywhere. It consumed the world around her in a roaring, crackling inferno that turned the sky to smoke and the earth to ash. She stood in the center of it, a small figure in a sea of destruction, watching as everything she had ever known burned to cinders around her. The village. Her village. The place where she had been born, where she had taken her first steps, where she had learned to speak and laugh and love in the way that children do before the world teaches them fear. It was gone now. All of it. Swallowed by flames that seemed to move with purpose, with intention, with a hunger that went beyond anything natural. These weren't ordinary fires. They didn't spread the way normal flames spread. They hunted. They targeted. They wrapped around cottages and barns and people with a precision that spoke of something darker than accident. Something designed. Something cursed. Kira watched frozen, helpless, trapped in the amber of her own nightmare, as figures ran through the inferno around her. Screaming. Always screaming. Their voices blended together into a chorus of agony that she had never been able to forget, no matter how hard she tried, no matter how many years passed, no matter how many times she told herself it was just a dream. Just a dream. Just a dream. Just a... A woman burst from the flames directly in front of her. Her hair was silver, not gray with age, but silver like starlight, like moonbeams woven into silk. Her eyes were the color of storm clouds, wild and desperate and filled with a terror that transcended death. Her hands were raised, and from her palms poured light, silver light, the same light that had exploded from Kira's wounds in the clearing. The same light that lived in her blood. The woman's mouth was moving. She was shouting something, a name, maybe, or a warning, or a prayer. But no sound reached Kira's ears. The roar of the flames swallowed everything, drowned every voice, consumed every word before it could bridge the gap between them. And then, from the darkness beyond the fire, something emerged. Massive. Black. Moving with a terrible, predatory grace that made Kira's blood freeze in her veins. A wolf. No, not just a wolf. The wolf. The same creature that had hunted her through the frozen forest. The same beast that had pinned her with those burning golden eyes. The same monster that wore a man's face when the moon allowed it. Draven. But not Draven as she knew him now. This version was different. Wilder. More savage. The intelligence that she had seen in his eyes, that flicker of humanity buried beneath centuries of suffering, was absent here. There was only hunger. Only rage. Only the pure, devastating instinct of a predator that had found its prey. The silver-haired woman turned to face the beast. Her hands rose higher, the light from her palms blazing brighter. And for a moment, a single, crystalline moment frozen in the amber of memory, their eyes met. The woman and the wolf. The witch and the monster. The curse and the cursed. Something passed between them. Something Kira couldn't understand, couldn't interpret, couldn't process through the veil of flame and smoke that separated her from the scene. But she felt it resonate in her bones, in her blood, in the deepest part of her soul where instinct lived and whispered. Recognition, grief, and something that might have been love, twisted beyond all recognition by betrayal and blood and the terrible mathematics of revenge. The wolf lunged. The woman screamed. And Kira woke up. Consciousness returned in fragments. First came sensation, the rough scratch of wool against her skin, the warmth of a fire crackling somewhere nearby, the dull throb of pain pulsing through every inch of her body like a second heartbeat. Then came awareness, the realization that she was lying down, that she was covered by something soft, that she was no longer in the frozen clearing where she had collapsed. Then came memory. It hit her like a physical blow, driving the breath from her lungs in a sharp gasp. The forest, the wolves, the blood moon, Draven, the massacre, her family, her ancestors, the truth. Kira's eyes flew open, and she found herself staring at a ceiling she didn't recognize. Rough-hewn wooden beams darkened with age and smoke, hung with bundles of dried herbs that filled the air with scents of lavender and sage and something else. Something sharper. Something that made the power sleeping in her veins stir with recognition. She tried to sit up. Her body refused. Every muscle screamed in protest. Every nerve ending flared with pain. It felt like someone had reached inside her and rearranged her organs, had torn apart the very fabric of her being and stitched it back together with threads of lightning and broken glass. The light. The silver light that had poured from her wounds. The power that had exploded from her body and scattered the attacking wolves like leaves before a hurricane. What had that been? What had she done? What was she? The questions spiraled through her mind, chasing each other in endless circles, each one spawning a dozen more. But beneath them all, beneath the confusion and the fear and the desperate need for answers, one truth kept rising to the surface, impossible to ignore. She was not human. Or at least, not entirely. The blood in her veins, the blood that had burned silver in the moonlight, that had called forth power she didn't understand, that had made even Cashin's crimson eyes widen with something approaching fear. That blood came from somewhere. From someone. From the witches of Ashwood. The coven that Draven had slaughtered 3 centuries ago. The women who had cursed him with their dying breaths, binding him to an eternity of suffering and madness and slow, relentless decay. Her ancestors. Her family. Her blood. Kira closed her eyes, and the nightmare images swam up from the depths of her memory. The silver-haired woman. The burning village. The massive black wolf lunging through the flames. She had seen that scene before. 1,000 times, in 1,000 dreams, across every night of her life that she could remember. But she had never understood what she was seeing. She had never known that the burning village was real, that it wasn't just a nightmare conjured by a frightened child's imagination, but a memory. A true memory, passed down through blood and bone, encoded in her very cells like a message from the dead. The massacre of Ashwood. She had been there. Not in body, she hadn't been born yet, wouldn't be born for centuries, but in spirit. In bloodline. In the unbroken chain of inheritance that connected her to the women who had lived and loved and died in those flames. Their power was her power. Their curse was her curse. Their enemy. Kira's throat tightened. Their enemy was the man who had carried her to safety. The monster who had fought off an entire pack to protect her. The alpha whose voice had echoed through the darkness of her unconsciousness, begging her not to leave him. Please don't leave me. Not when I finally found you. Not when I finally found hope. The words haunted her, each one a blade sliding between her ribs. Because she had felt the truth in them. Had felt the raw, desperate sincerity that no amount of cursed manipulation could fake. Whatever Draven had done 300 years ago, whatever crimes stained his soul, whatever blood marked his hands. He hadn't been lying when he begged for mercy. He genuinely didn't remember. The curse had taken those memories from him, locked them away behind walls of shadow and suffering, left him to wander through centuries of damnation without ever truly understanding why he was being punished. Was that justice? Was that fair? To condemn a man to eternal torment while simultaneously stealing his ability to understand what he had done to deserve it? The witches of Ashwood had been powerful. Kira understood that now. The light that lived in her blood, the fire that burned beneath her skin, the voice that had torn through the clearing and scattered wolves like frightened rabbits, that power came from them. From centuries of accumulated knowledge and magic and connection to forces that ordinary humans couldn't comprehend. But power didn't make you right. Power didn't make you just. Power just made you powerful, and what you did with that power, what choices you made, what actions you took in its name, that was what defined you. Her ancestors had chosen revenge. They had chosen to bind Draven's soul with chains of darkness, to shatter his mind under every moon, to slowly rot his spirit from the inside out across centuries of endless suffering. And in doing so, had they become monsters themselves? Kira didn't know. She didn't have enough information, enough context, enough understanding of the events that had led to that terrible night in Ashwood. All she had were fragments. Dreams and visions and the desperate words of a cursed alpha who couldn't remember his own crimes. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was all she had. The sound of footsteps broke through her spiraling thoughts. Kira's eyes snapped open again. She hadn't even realized she'd closed them, and she turned her head toward the source of the sound, her heart hammering against her ribs. Draven stood in the doorway. He was in his human form, dressed in simple clothes that did nothing to diminish the overwhelming presence he carried with him like a second skin. His dark hair fell loose around his shoulders, still damp from what might have been snow or water or blood. His golden eyes were fixed on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch in her throat. He looked exhausted. No, more than exhausted. He looked like a man who had been holding himself together through sheer force of will and was finally running out of strength. The black veins that traced patterns across his skin were more prominent now, darker, more defined, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed to match her own heartbeat. His hands trembled slightly at his sides, and there were shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and endless battles and a weariness that went bone deep. He had been watching over her. The realization struck Kira with unexpected force. While she lay unconscious, while her body recovered from whatever she had done in that clearing, Draven had stayed, had guarded her, had kept vigil through the long dark hours, fighting off whatever threats emerged, sacrificing his own rest to ensure her safety. The monster who had slaughtered her ancestors, protecting the last of their line. The irony was not lost on her. Neither was the ache that bloomed in her chest at the sight of him. Draven took a single step into the room, then stopped. As if he was afraid to come closer. As if he wasn't sure whether his presence would be welcome or whether she would recoil from him in horror now that she knew the truth. His lips parted. Closed. Parted again. No words came out. And in that silence, in the vast, aching space between them, Kira saw something she hadn't expected. Shame. It was written across his features like a brand, burning in the depths of his golden eyes, twisting the hard lines of his face into something almost vulnerable. He knew what Cashin had revealed in the clearing. He knew that she now understood the truth about what he had done, about the blood that stained his hands, about the screams that should have echoed in his memory but didn't. And he was waiting for her judgment, waiting for her to condemn him, waiting for her to become just another voice in the chorus of hatred that had defined his existence for 300 years. Kira thought about the nightmare, about the silver-haired woman with storm-cloud eyes, about the way she had raised her hands against the monster bearing down on her, light blazing from her palms, power flowing through her veins. That woman had been her ancestor, her blood, her family, and Draven had killed her. The knowledge should have filled Kira with rage. should have ignited the fire sleeping in her veins and sent it roaring through her body, demanding justice, demanding revenge, demanding blood for blood in the ancient calculus of vengeance. But rage wasn't what she felt. What she felt was grief. For the witches who had died. For the monster who couldn't remember killing them. For the curse that had bound them all together across centuries of suffering. For the terrible, devastating waste of it all. She should hate him. Every logical part of her brain, every moral fiber of her being, every instinct that whispered about justice and retribution and the debts that blood demanded. All of it said she should hate him. But she didn't. Maybe that made her weak. Maybe that made her foolish. Maybe that made her just as broken as he was, just as damaged, just as twisted by forces beyond her control. But when Kira looked at Draven, when she saw the shame in his eyes and the tremble in his hands and the vast, aching loneliness that radiated from him like cold from a winter storm, she didn't see a monster. She saw a man. A broken, damned, desperately suffering man who had been drowning in darkness for 300 years and was finally catching sight of shore. And some part of her, some part that she didn't fully understand, couldn't fully control, couldn't silence no matter how hard she tried. That part of her wanted to reach out, wanted to touch him, wanted to tell him that he wasn't alone anymore. That whatever came next, whatever trials they faced, whatever truths they uncovered about the terrible night in Ashwood and the curse that had bound them together, she wouldn't abandon him. She couldn't. Because whether she liked it or not, whether she understood it or not, whether she could explain it or not, their fates were intertwined now. His curse was her birthright. Her power was his only hope. And the threads of destiny that connected them were too strong, too ancient, too fundamentally woven into the fabric of reality to be severed by something as simple as 300 years of blood and guilt. Kira opened her mouth. The words came slowly, each one a struggle against the dryness in her throat and the weight on her chest. Not a question. Not a demand. Just a statement. A truth. A beginning. I don't remember them. Draven went very still. The witches. My ancestors. The women who died in Ashwood. I don't remember them. I don't remember anything about them, their names, their faces, their voices. All I have are dreams. Fragments. Shadows of memories that don't feel like my own. Her gaze held his, steady despite the tremor in her voice. You can't remember killing them. I can't remember them living. We're both stumbling through this curse-blind, Draven. Both of us are missing pieces that we need to understand what happened, what's happening, what's going to happen. She paused. Drew a breath. Let it out slowly. I'm not saying I forgive you. I don't even know what that would mean, forgiving someone for something they don't remember doing, for crimes committed against people I never knew. It doesn't feel like something I have the right to give. It doesn't feel like something that's mine to offer. But the word hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. But I'm also not going to condemn you. Not yet. Not until I understand. Not until I know the truth, all of it, not just the pieces that Cashin wanted me to hear. You said the curse sings when I'm near. You said your soul has been calling out for mine for 300 years. You said, her voice cracked. She steadied it. You said I'm yours now. That you protect what's yours. Well, if that's true, if any of that is true, then prove it. Help me understand what I am. Help me understand what happened in Ashwood. Help me find the memories that both of us are missing. And maybe then we can figure out how to break this curse without either of us having to die. Silence. Long and heavy and thick with unspoken emotion. Draven's golden eyes searched her face, looking for something, deception, maybe, or hidden fury, or the condemnation he so clearly expected. Whatever he saw there seemed to shake something loose inside him, seemed to crack open a door that had been locked for centuries. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, dropped to his knees beside the bed where she lay, and bowed his head, not in submission, not in defeat, in gratitude, in relief, in the soul-deep acknowledgement of a hope he had stopped believing was possible. His voice, when it came, was barely a whisper, ragged and raw and thick with emotion. He was clearly not used to expressing. I don't deserve your mercy. I don't deserve your patience. I don't deserve anything you're offering. But I will take it. I will take it, and I will guard it, and I will do everything in my power to be worthy of it. I will help you understand. I will help you find the truth. I will tear apart every shadow, every secret, every locked door in my fractured memory until we have the answers we need. And if, at the end of it all, when you finally see everything I was, everything I did, everything I became in that burning village 3 centuries ago, if you decide that I deserve to die, I won't fight you. I'll bare my throat and let you end it. Because that's what you are to me now, Kira. You're my judge, my jury, my executioner, and my only hope. All of them. All at once. And I wouldn't have it any other way. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the distant echo of Wolf's song. And in that small, ancient cabin hidden deep in the heart of the cursed forest, 2 broken souls began the long, painful process of learning to trust each other. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing about any of this would be easy. The curse still hung over them like a blade waiting to fall. The pack that had attacked them was still out there, led by an alpha with crimson eyes and a hunger for power. The truth about Ashwood was still buried beneath centuries of blood and shadow and the deliberate erasure of memory. And somewhere, in the darkness between worlds, something was watching. Something that had been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. Something that knew what Kira was becoming. Something that knew what Draven had been. Something that knew the terrible, devastating secret at the heart of the curse, the final twist that neither of them saw coming. Only the one who loves him can kill him, and only the one he kills can set him free. The words echoed through the void. Waiting, patient, hungry, because the curse wasn't just punishment. It was prophecy. And prophecies always come true. One way or another. 3 days passed in the cabin. 3 days of healing and watching and the slow, careful dance of 2 wounded souls learning to exist in the same space without tearing each other apart. Kira's body recovered faster than it should have. The wounds on her arms, those strange, parallel claw marks that had split open to pour silver light, closed within the first day, leaving behind scars that shimmered faintly in certain angles of light. The exhaustion that had pressed her into the bed like a physical weight lifted gradually, replaced by something else. Something that felt almost like strength. She didn't trust it. Didn't trust any of this. The power sleeping in her veins was an unknown quantity, a weapon she didn't know how to wield, a gift she hadn't asked for, an inheritance from ancestors she couldn't remember. Every time she felt it stir beneath her skin, every time the fire in her chest flickered in response to strong emotion, every time the silver light threatened to rise unbidden from the depths of her blood, she forced it down, locked it away, refused to let it surface. Because she had seen what happened when she lost control. She had scattered an entire pack of wolves with a single scream. What would happen if she truly let go? What would happen if she stopped fighting the power and simply became it? The question terrified her, almost as much as the answer. Draven watched her constantly during those 3 days, not with suspicion, but with something closer to wonder. He kept his distance, respecting the boundaries she had silently established, never pushing, never demanding, never trying to accelerate the fragile trust building between them. But his eyes followed her everywhere. Golden and burning and filled with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. He was waiting for something. She could feel it. Waiting for a sign, maybe, or a signal, or the right moment to reveal whatever he was holding back. Because he was holding something back. Kira was certain of it. Every time she asked about Ashwood, about the curse, about the truth buried beneath 3 centuries of blood and shadow, his answers were incomplete. Fragments of memories that didn't quite connect. Impressions rather than facts. The scattered pieces of a puzzle that refused to form a coherent picture. He wasn't lying. She could feel that too. In the strange way, she seemed to feel everything about him now, his emotions bleeding into her awareness, like colors seeping through wet paper. He genuinely didn't remember. But there was something else. Something he knew that he wasn't telling her. Something he was afraid to reveal. On the morning of the fourth day, he finally spoke. Kira was standing by the window when he approached, watching the pale winter sun filter through the frost-covered glass. The forest beyond was still and silent, the trees standing like sentinels against a sky the color of old bone. No bird sang. No wind stirred. It was as if the entire world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. She felt him before she heard him, that strange awareness that had developed between them over the past 3 days, the way her body seemed to attune itself to his presence like a compass needle finding north. The hair on the back of her neck rose. Her pulse quickened. The fire in her chest flickered in response to his approach. He stopped a few feet behind her. Close enough to touch. Far enough to retreat. The distance of a man who was still learning where the boundaries lay. His voice, when it came, was low and rough, the voice of someone who had spent too long in silence and was relearning how to form words. There's a place. Kira didn't turn. Didn't move. Just let his words wash over her like water over stone. A place in the heart of the forest. A place older than the curse. Older than the packs. Older than anything that walks on 2 legs or 4. The wolves call it the Hollow of Echoes. It's where the first alpha was born. Where the first blood was spilled. Where the boundary between worlds is thin enough that the dead can speak to the living, if the living know how to listen. Now Kira did turn. Draven's face was carved from shadow and candlelight, his golden eyes burning with something that looked almost like fear. His hands were clasped behind his back, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid line of his spine, the way he held himself like a man bracing for impact. I've never been there, he continued. The curse won't let me. Every time I've tried, every time I've gotten close, the madness takes me. The beast rises up and swallows everything human, and I wake up days later with blood on my hands and no memory of what I've done. But you. His gaze locked with hers. You might be able to enter. The curse was made by your blood. The power in your veins comes from the same source that created the boundaries around the hollow. If anyone can walk those paths without being destroyed by them, it's you. Kira's heart was hammering against her ribs. What would I find there? What's in this hollow that's worth risking my life? Draven's jaw tightened. Answers. The truth about Ashwood. The truth about the curse. The truth about what I did and why I did it and how to break the chains that have bound me for 300 years. The witches who cursed me, your ancestors, they weren't just practitioners of small magic. They were the keepers of the old ways. They maintained the boundaries between worlds, guarded the sacred places, preserved knowledge that dated back to the dawn of the wolf kind. When they died, that knowledge should have died with them. But it didn't. They stored it, hid it, locked it away in the one place that even I couldn't reach. The Hollow of Echoes. And now, his voice cracked. Now you're here. The last of their line. The only one who might be able to access what they left behind. The only one who might be able to show me what I really am. Kira stared at him. The fire in her chest was burning brighter now, responding to the weight of his words, to the desperate hope she could feel radiating from him like heat from a forge. He was asking her to walk into the unknown, to enter a place that could destroy her, to risk everything on the chance, the slim, uncertain chance, that the answers they needed might be waiting there. It was madness. It was suicide. It was the only option they had. Because the alternative was to stay here, in this cabin, in this fragile bubble of temporary safety, while the world outside closed in around them. Cashin was still out there. The pack that had attacked them was still hunting. The curse was still eating away at Draven's soul, one piece at a time, and eventually, inevitably, there would be nothing left. They couldn't run forever. They couldn't hide forever. The only way out was through. Kira drew a breath. Let it out slowly. and nodded. The journey to the hollow took most of the day. They moved through the forest in silence, Draven in his wolf form, massive and dark and utterly silent, Kira following in his wake like a leaf carried by an invisible current. He had offered to carry her, to let her ride on his back the way she had seen in stories about the old times, when wolves and witches had worked together instead of tearing each other apart. She had refused. Not out of fear. Out of something else. Something that told her she needed to walk this path on her own feet. That the hollow would know if she came as a passenger rather than a pilgrim. That the answers waiting for her there could only be earned, not given. So she walked. Hour after hour, mile after mile, through frozen underbrush and across frozen streams, up slopes that burned her legs and down ravines that stole her breath. The cold bit at her exposed skin numbed her fingers and toes, turned her exhaled breath into clouds of crystalline vapor that hung in the still air like ghosts. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Something was pulling her forward. Something deeper than determination. Something that felt almost like recognition. As if some part of her, some ancient, sleeping part that had nothing to do with conscious thought, knew exactly where they were going and had been waiting to make this journey for a very, very long time. The forest changed as they traveled. The trees grew older, their trunks wider, their branches twisted into shapes that seemed almost deliberate. The snow became deeper, the shadows darker, the silence more absolute. No animals moved through these woods. No insect stirred. Even the wind seemed afraid to enter, dying at some invisible boundary and leaving the air utterly still. And then, between one step and the next, they arrived. The hollow of echoes was not what Kira had expected. She had imagined something dramatic, a cave mouth gaping like a wound in the earth, or a circle of standing stones carved with ancient symbols, or a temple built from bones and shadow and the fossilized remains of the world before the world. Instead, she found a clearing. Just a clearing. Circular, perhaps 100 feet across, ringed by trees so ancient their bark had turned to stone. The ground was covered not with snow but with moss, deep, emerald green moss that shouldn't have been able to survive in this frozen wasteland but somehow thrived. Mist hung low over the space, coiling and shifting in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, almost sentient, almost alive. And in the center of the clearing, a pool. Perfectly circular, perhaps 20 feet across, its surface so still it might have been made of black glass. It reflected nothing, not the trees around it, not the pale gray sky above, not the ghostly reeds of mist that coiled across its surface. It was a window, or a door, or a mirror turned inward, showing not what was but what had been, what would be, what existed in the spaces between moments where time lost its meaning. Draven stopped at the edge of the clearing. His massive form went rigid, every muscle locked, every hair standing on end. A low sound rumbled from his chest, not quite a growl, not quite a whimper. Something in between. Something that spoke of pain held at bay through sheer force of will. The boundary. This was as far as he could go. Kira turned to look at him, at the beast that contained the man, at the monster that had somehow become her guide, her protector, her strange and complicated ally. Their eyes met. Gold and green and silver all tangled together. No words passed between them, none were needed. She saw everything she needed to see in his gaze. Fear for her. Hope for them both. And something else. Something deeper. Something that made her chest ache in ways she didn't fully understand. She turned away before she could examine that feeling too closely, and walked into the hollow. The moment Kira crossed the boundary, the world changed. The mist thickened around her, rising from the ground in waves, wrapping around her legs and waist and chest like the fingers of a curious child exploring something new. It was warm, surprisingly warm, and it carried a scent that made the fire in her veins flare with recognition. Ash. Lavender. Blood. The smells of ashwood. The smells of home. Kira stumbled, her hand flying to her chest as memories that weren't hers slammed into her consciousness. Flashes of images, fragments of sounds, ghosts of sensations that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. A woman singing over a cradle, her voice high and sweet and filled with love. A child laughing in a sunlit meadow, chasing butterflies with silver wings. A circle of figures gathered around a fire, their hands linked, their voices rising in harmony as light poured from their joined palms. The witches of Ashwood. Her ancestors. Her blood. She was seeing their memories, living their moments, feeling what they had felt, knowing what they had known, experiencing the world through eyes that had turned to dust centuries ago. And beneath it all, threaded through every image, every sound, every sensation. Power. Vast and ancient and utterly, terrifyingly beautiful. The power of the old ways. The power that her ancestors had guarded and cultivated and wielded in service of something greater than themselves. The power that now lived in her blood, dormant and waiting, ready to be claimed by the one who had finally returned. Kira forced herself forward. One step. Another. Another. The pool was closer now, its dark surface rippling slightly despite the absolute stillness of the air. Something was moving beneath the water, or not water, she realized, because what she had taken for liquid was something else entirely. Something that existed in multiple states at once. Something that was solid and liquid and gas and light and shadow all tangled together in ways that defied the laws of physics. The boundary between worlds. The place where the living could speak to the dead. Kira reached the edge of the pool and stopped. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark surface, but it wasn't quite right. The face was hers, but older. More defined. The eyes that gazed up from the depths were the same green as her own, but they held centuries of knowledge that she didn't possess. Silver streaked through the reflected hair, and lines of experience traced the reflected skin, and power, ancient, devastating, beautiful power, burned in the reflected gaze with an intensity that made Kira's breath catch in her throat. This was what she could become. This was what she was meant to be. The last witch of Ashwood, fully awakened, fully realized, fully in command of the inheritance that had been passed down through blood and bone across 3 centuries of survival. But was that what she wanted? Did she have a choice? The reflection smiled, a sad, knowing smile that held no mockery, only understanding. And then it spoke. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, rising from the pool and the mist and the ancient trees and the very air itself. It was not one voice, but many, a chorus of women speaking in perfect unison, their tones blending into something that was at once human and divine. Child of our blood, heir of our power, last of our line, we have been waiting for you. Kira's legs gave out. She dropped to her knees at the edge of the pool, her hands pressing into the impossibly soft moss, her heart hammering against her ribs with enough force to shatter bone. Who are you? The question rose unbidden, torn from somewhere deep inside her. Who am I? What am I? What happened in Ashwood? What did he do? What did you do? What does any of this mean? The chorus of voices sighed, a sound like wind through autumn leaves, like rain on a summer roof, like the last breath of a dying star. So many questions. So little time. The boundary grows thin, child. The curse grows strong. The alpha grows weak. And the ones who hunt you, they are closer than you know. So we will show you what we can. And pray it is enough. The pool's surface shattered. Not into fragments, into light. Silver light, the same silver that burned in Kira's blood, exploding upward in a column that pierced the mist and seemed to touch the very sky. And within that light, visions. She saw Ashwood as it had been. Not the burning ruin from her nightmares, but the living village that had existed before the fire. It was beautiful. Cottages with thatched roofs lined winding paths of smooth stone. Gardens burst with herbs and flowers that glowed faintly in the twilight, silver and gold and colors that had no names in any human language. Children played in the central square, their laughter bright and pure, their small hands trailing sparks of light as they chased each other through the gathering dusk. And the women, the witches, they were everywhere. Young and old, dark and fair, tall and small, but all of them carried the same light in their eyes, the same power in their blood, the same connection to something vast and ancient and utterly beyond ordinary human comprehension. They were healers, guardians, keepers of the boundaries between worlds. And they were loved. Kira could feel it, the warmth that radiated from the village, the sense of community and purpose and belonging that permeated every stone and every soul. This was not a coven of dark witches hiding in the shadows, practicing forbidden arts and plotting against the innocent. This was a sanctuary, a home, a beacon of light in a world that was growing darker by the day. And at the heart of it all, a woman, silver hair cascading past her shoulders like liquid moonlight, storm-gray eyes that held centuries of wisdom and a grief so deep it had become indistinguishable from her soul. Features that were familiar in a way that made Kira's chest ache with recognition. Because this woman looked like her. Not identical. The cheekbones were different, the nose slightly longer, the mouth fuller, but the resemblance was unmistakable. Blood. Family. Ancestor. The woman stood at the center of the village, her hands raised toward the sky, light pouring from her palms as she wove patterns in the air that seemed to strengthen the invisible boundaries around Ashwood. Around her, a circle of other witches knelt in support, their own light feeding into hers, amplifying her power, creating a barrier that nothing could breach. Nothing except. The vision shifted. Darkness at the edges of the forest. Movement in the shadows between trees. And then, wolves. Dozens of them, their eyes burning gold in the twilight, their bodies rippling with power that was not natural, was not born, was stolen and twisted and corrupted from something that had once been pure. And at their head, Draven. But not Draven as she knew him. This version was younger, his face unlined by centuries of suffering, his eyes clear of the madness that lurked in their depths now. He moved with a predator's grace, but there was something wrong about him. Something twisted. Something that spoke of violation rather than nature. Chains of shadow wrapped around his wrists and ankles and throat, invisible to ordinary eyes, but blazing in the witch sight that Kira had apparently inherited. They dug into his flesh like barbed wire, drawing blood that steamed in the cold air, and every time he tried to slow down, tried to turn back, tried to resist the force that was driving him forward. The chains tightened, and a voice echoed through the darkness. A man's voice. Cold and cruel and filled with a hatred so pure it poisoned the very air. Kill them. Kill them all. Leave no survivors. This is my command. This is my will. This is the price of your defiance. Draven screamed. Not with his voice, with his soul. Kira felt it echo through time, through blood, through the connection that bound them together across centuries of suffering. She felt his horror as his body moved against his will. Felt his despair as his claws and fangs found flesh. Felt his agony as the curse took root in his soul, planted there by someone who was using him as a weapon. He wasn't the architect of the massacre. He was the instrument. The sword wielded by another hand. The slave who had no choice but to obey. And as the village burned around him, as the screams of the dying filled the air and the light of the witches flickered and failed, the silver-haired woman found him. She could have killed him. Kira saw the power gathering in her ancestors' hands, saw the light building to a crescendo that could have obliterated Draven where he stood. One blast, one focused beam of divine retribution, and the monster would be destroyed. But she didn't. Instead, she looked into his eyes. Past the madness. Past the curse. Past the puppet strings that bound him to his unknown master. And she saw the truth. She saw the victim hiding inside the monster. She saw the man drowning inside the beast. She saw the innocent soul screaming for help while his body committed atrocities he couldn't stop. And in that moment, in that terrible, beautiful, devastating moment, she made a choice. Not revenge. Not destruction. Something else. Something that cost her everything. Her hands rose not to kill, but to bind. Light poured from her palms, weaving around Draven in patterns so complex Kira's mind couldn't follow them. The curse that had been planted in him by the mysterious master was wrapped in new chains, chains of the witch's own making, chains that would hold the madness at bay, chains that would give him a chance, however small, however distant, to one day find redemption. But every binding required balance. Every chain forged required a sacrifice. And the sacrifice her ancestor chose was herself. The vision blurred with silver tears that might have been Kira's own. She watched as the light left her ancestor's body, watched as centuries of power and wisdom and love poured into the curse chains, watched as the strongest witch of Ashwood gave everything she had, everything she was, to save the monster who had destroyed her home. Not because she forgave him, but because she understood. Because she knew that he was just as much a victim as the women dying around her. Because she refused to let evil have the last word. With her final breath, with the last spark of light remaining in her silver eyes, the witch spoke the words that would echo through 3 centuries of darkness. You are bound, but you are not damned. The one without scent will come. The child of our blood will find you. And she will have a choice that I did not. To save you or to destroy you. To love you or to kill you. But either way, she will set you free. And she will end what we could not. The master who made you his weapon. The darkness that consumed our light. The evil that hunted us to extinction. She will end it all. Because she is not just our heir. She is our revenge. Our hope. Our last and greatest gift to a world that turned its back on us. She is the one we have been waiting for. The one we dreamed of. The one we loved before she was ever born. Our daughter. Our legacy. Our flame. The vision shattered. The light died. And Kira knelt at the edge of the pool in the hollow of echoes, tears streaming down her face, the truth burning in her veins like holy fire. She understood now. Everything. Draven hadn't chosen to massacre Ashwood. He had been used, a puppet dancing on strings held by someone else, someone whose voice she had heard in the vision, someone whose hatred had driven the wolves to slaughter and the witches to extinction. Someone who is still out there, still hunting, still waiting. The real enemy, the true architect of 3 centuries of suffering. And she, Kira, was the weapon her ancestors had forged to destroy him. Not through hatred. Not through revenge, but through something far more powerful, something that terrified her more than any curse or monster or ancient evil ever could. Through love. Only the one who loves him can kill him, and only the one he kills can set him free. The words from the prophecy suddenly made terrible, beautiful sense. The curse wasn't just punishment. It was a trap. A trap for the real enemy, the master who had used Draven as his weapon. And Kira was the bait. The one who could draw him out. The one who could make him reveal himself. The one who could finally end what had begun in blood and fire 300 years ago. If she was willing to pay the price. If she was strong enough to bear the burden. If she could find it in her heart to love a monster. And trust that love to save them both. Kira emerged from the hollow of echoes changed. Not physically, though something in her bearing had shifted, something in the way she held herself spoke of power acknowledged if not yet fully claimed. The change was deeper than flesh. It was carved into her soul now, written in the fire that burned beneath her skin, etched into every cell of her being by the visions she had witnessed. She knew the truth. She knew what she was. She knew what she had to do. And she was absolutely terrified. Draven was waiting at the boundary where she had left him, his massive wolf form pacing back and forth with an agitation that bordered on madness. The moment she stepped out of the mist, the moment her feet crossed the invisible line that marked the edge of the sacred ground, his head snapped toward her. Those golden eyes searched her face with desperate intensity, looking for answers, looking for hope, looking for the judgment that he knew was coming. Kira met his gaze and felt something in her chest crack open, something she had been holding locked tight for days, for years, for her entire life. The walls she had built around her heart, the defenses she had constructed to protect herself from a world that had never felt like home. They crumbled. And in their place, something new began to grow. She walked toward him. Slowly. Deliberately. Each step a declaration of intent that she wasn't fully conscious of making. When she reached him, she didn't stop. Didn't hesitate. Didn't give herself time to think about what she was doing. She pressed her forehead against his. Wolf and woman. Monster and heir. The cursed and the cure. Her hands came up to rest on either side of his massive head, her fingers sinking into the coarse dark fur, feeling the heat of him radiating against her palms. His eyes closed. A sound escaped his throat, not quite a whine, not quite a growl. Something in between. Something that spoke of relief so profound it bordered on agony. I saw, she whispered in her mind, pushing the words toward him the way she had learned he could receive them. I saw everything. You didn't choose this. You were never the villain. You were the weapon, Draven. Used by someone else. Controlled by someone else. Forced to commit atrocities while your soul screamed for help. My ancestors knew. They knew, and they still chose to save you. They poured everything they had, their power, their lives, their very souls, into the curse that binds you. Not to punish you. To protect you. To hold the madness at bay until someone could come who might be able to break the chains completely. Until I could come. The great wolf shuddered beneath her touch. His body began to shift, bones cracking, muscles reforming, for receding into flesh, and then Draven was standing before her in his human form, naked and vulnerable and trembling with emotion he couldn't contain. His hands came up to cup her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized she was crying. His voice was a ragged whisper, broken and raw and filled with something that sounded dangerously close to hope. You believe me. You actually believe me. After everything, after all the blood, all the death, all the centuries of horror that my hands have wrought. You believe I didn't choose it. Kira's throat was too tight for spoken words, but she nodded. I saw your face in the vision. I saw you trying to fight it, trying to break free, trying to turn back. I saw the chains they wrapped around your soul, the ones that forced you forward no matter how hard you struggled. You were screaming, Draven. On the inside, in the place where your true self still existed, you were screaming for help. And my ancestor heard you. That's why she did what she did. That's why she sacrificed herself to reshape the curse instead of simply destroying you. Because she saw what I see. The man inside the monster. The soul that's been drowning in darkness for 300 years. The heart that's still beating beneath all that pain. Draven's forehead dropped to hers, his breath ghosting across her lips, his entire body shaking with the force of emotions he had been suppressing for centuries. Who, he breathed. Who did this to me? Who made me their weapon? Who destroyed your family and bound us both to this nightmare? Kira's jaw tightened. I don't know. The vision showed me a voice, a man's voice, cold and cruel and filled with hatred. But I couldn't see his face. Couldn't identify him. My ancestors knew, I think. They must have known, but they died before they could name him. He's still out there, Draven. Whoever he is, whatever he wants, he's still hunting. And he's going to come for us. Both of us. Because we're the only ones who can stop him now. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled long and mournful and filled with a grief that seemed to echo through the frozen trees. Then another joined it. And another. And another. Until the forest was alive with wolf song. Draven's head snapped up, his golden eyes going hard and flat. They've found us. Cashin's pack. They must have been tracking us since the hollow. We need to move. Now. But before either of them could take a step, the trees around them exploded with movement. They came from everywhere at once. Wolves burst from the shadows between the ancient trees, dozens of them, their eyes blazing crimson in the dying light, their bodies coiled with predatory intent. They formed a circle around Draven and Kira, cutting off every possible escape route, trapping them in a ring of fangs and fury. And at their center, Cashin. The scarred alpha stood in his human form, his crimson eyes fixed on Kira with an intensity that made her blood run cold. He was smiling, that same terrible smile from the clearing, the one that promised violence and relished the coming pain. But he wasn't alone. Flanking him on either side were figures Kira didn't recognize, wolves in human form, their faces hard and suspicious, their bodies radiating the kind of power that spoke of age and authority. Elders, maybe. Or generals. Or whatever passed for leadership in the fractured world of the wolf packs. And behind them, a woman. Old beyond measure, her face a map of lines and shadows, her eyes the color of smoke at twilight. She leaned on a staff carved from bone and wrapped in silver wire, and when she looked at Kira, when those ancient, knowing eyes found hers and held them, something in the pit of Kira's stomach clenched with cold dread. The woman knew. Whatever Kira was, whatever power she possessed, whatever secrets burned in her blood, this woman could see it all. Cashin stepped forward, his crimson gaze sweeping from Draven to Kira and back again. The satisfaction in his voice was sickening. Did you really think you could hide from us, Draven? Did you really think you could take the witch's heir to the Hollow of Echoes without us noticing? We've been watching since the moment you left that pathetic cabin. Tracking. Waiting. Giving you enough rope to hang yourself. And now, his smile widened. Now you've done exactly what we hoped you would. You've proven once and for all where your loyalties lie. With her. He spat the word like a curse. With the last of the bloodline that damned us all. With the descendant of the witches who hunted our kind for centuries before they finally fell. Kira felt Draven tense beside her, felt the rage building in his blood like a storm about to break. But before he could respond, before he could defend himself or her or the truth of what had actually happened at Ashwood, the ancient woman stepped forward. Her voice was like gravel wrapped in silk, rough and smooth at once, carrying an authority that made even Cashin fall silent. Enough. The word echoed through the clearing, silencing the growls and snarls of the assembled wolves. We did not come here to trade insults, Alpha Cashin. We came here for truth. We came here for judgment. We came here to determine, once and for all, whether the Dark Alpha should live or die, and whether the witch he protects should share his fate. She turned those smoke-colored eyes to Kira. You have been to the Hollow. It was not a question. You have spoken with the echoes of your ancestors. You have learned what was hidden. Now, the staff struck the frozen ground, and the sound seemed to reverberate through Kira's very bones. Share what you have learned. Let us all hear the truth, and then we will judge. Kira's heart was hammering against her ribs. This was it. The moment she had been dreading. The moment when she had to stand before the enemies of her blood and speak the truth that could save them or doom them. She looked at Draven. His golden eyes were fixed on her face, and in them she saw everything he was feeling, fear and hope and desperation and something else, something deeper, something that made her chest ache with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. He wouldn't fight this. He wouldn't run. Whatever she chose to say, whatever version of the truth she decided to tell, he would accept it. Because he trusted her. Completely. Absolutely. Even though she was the descendant of the women who had cursed him. Even though she held his life in her hands. Even though a single word from her lips could be his death sentence. He trusted her. And that trust, that impossible, devastating, terrifying trust, it made her choice for her. Kira turned to face the assembled wolves. She drew herself up to her full height, not tall, not imposing, but something about her presence made the wolves nearest to her take an unconscious step backward. And she spoke. Not with words. With power. The fire in her veins ignited, rising up through her blood like a tide of silver flame. It poured from her skin, from her eyes, from the scars on her arms that had never fully faded. It wrapped around her like a mantle, like a crown, like the visible manifestation of 3 centuries of inherited power finally claiming its rightful host. Her voice, when it emerged, was not just hers. It was the voice of the hollow, the voice of the echoes, the voice of every witch who had ever lived and died and passed their power down through blood and bone. You want truth? The words resonated through the clearing, making the ancient trees shiver, making the snow rise in swirling patterns, making even Cassion's crimson eyes widen with something approaching fear. Then hear it. Draven of the Nightbane did not choose to slaughter the witches of Ashwood. He was not the architect of the massacre. He was the weapon enslaved, controlled, forced to commit atrocities while his soul screamed for mercy. Someone else drove him to kill. Someone else bound his will and turned him into an instrument of slaughter. Someone else is responsible for the blood that stained those burning woods 3 centuries ago. And that someone is still out there, still hunting, still using the wolf packs as his puppets, his pawns, his means to an end that none of you comprehend. You think Draven is your enemy? You think I am your threat? You're wrong. The real enemy is the one who turned an alpha into a murder weapon. The real enemy is the one who has been manipulating your kind for 300 years. The real enemy is the shadow you can't see because you're too busy fighting each other to look up. And if you kill us, if you execute Draven and destroy the last heir of Ashwood, you won't be serving justice. You'll be serving him. The one who wants us dead. The one who's been waiting 3 centuries for someone to finish what he started. The true monster. The hidden master. The darkness that made Draven what he is, and that will make all of you the same if you don't open your eyes. Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. The silver light faded from Kira's skin, leaving her trembling and exhausted, but still standing. Still defiant. Still refusing to bow before the judgment of those who didn't understand what they were judging. The ancient woman stared at her for a long, waited moment. Those smoke-colored eyes seemed to peer through flesh and bone, seemed to examine the very essence of Kira's soul, seemed to weigh her words against some internal scale that only she could see. Then she spoke. Interesting. A compelling tale. But tales are not truth. And accusations are not evidence. She raised her staff. The council will deliberate until a verdict is reached. Her gaze swept to Draven, and something cold flickered in its depths. The Dark Alpha will be confined, bound, held until we determine whether his crimes can be forgiven or whether justice demands his execution. As for the witch, those ancient eyes found Kira's again. She will be given a choice. Leave now. Abandon the Alpha. Walk away from this conflict and never return. Or stay and share his fate. Whatever that fate may be. The words hit Kira like a physical blow. Leave. They were offering her a way out. A chance to escape, to survive, to walk away from this nightmare and never look back. All she had to do was abandon Draven. All she had to do was leave him to die. Her gaze found his. Golden eyes burning with emotion he couldn't hide. And in them, she saw acceptance. He expected her to go. He wanted her to go. Because he couldn't bear the thought of her dying for him. Because he believed, in the deepest part of his broken, damned soul, that he wasn't worth saving. That nothing he did could ever atone for the blood on his hands. That she should take the escape being offered and never waste another moment on a monster like him. Kira's heart shattered. And then, slowly, deliberately, with every ounce of defiance she possessed, she stepped closer to Draven, took his hand in hers, and spoke 2 words that changed everything. I stay. They were given a cell. That was the generous term for it, a cave carved into the mountain behind the Wolf Council's gathering place, its entrance blocked by bars of iron so pure they seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. The floor was bare stone, cold enough to steal warmth from flesh and bone. The ceiling dripped with moisture that never quite became water. And the only light came from a single torch mounted outside the bars, its flickering flame casting dancing shadows across the rough-hewn walls. A dungeon. A tomb. A place where hope came to die. Kira sat with her back against the stone wall, her knees drawn up to her chest, her arms wrapped around herself in a futile attempt to retain heat. Hours had passed since the council had dragged Draven away to some separate confinement, since they had thrown her into this cave and left her to contemplate her choices. Hours of silence. Hours of cold. Hours of wondering whether she had made the right decision. I stay. The words echoed through her memory, and even now, even trapped in this frozen prison, even facing the very real possibility of execution, she didn't regret them. Couldn't regret them. Because leaving him would have been the same as killing him herself. She had seen his face in that moment. Had seen the resignation in his eyes, the acceptance of a death he believed he deserved. If she had walked away, if she had taken the council's offer and abandoned him to his fate, something in him would have died long before the executioner's blade fell. The part that still hoped. The part that still fought. The part that still clung to the possibility of redemption despite 3 centuries of evidence to the contrary. She couldn't have destroyed that. Not for her own survival. Not for anything. The sound of footsteps broke through her spiraling thoughts. Kira's head snapped up, her body tensing, her eyes straining to see through the darkness beyond the bars. A figure emerged from the shadows. Draven. He was alone, no guards, no escorts, no chains binding his wrists or collar around his throat. He moved with the same predatory grace she had come to recognize, but there was something different about him now. Something softer. Something almost hesitant. He stopped at the bars of her cell. His golden eyes found hers through the darkness. And for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Draven raised his hand and the iron bars dissolved. Just dissolved. Particles of metal floating away on an invisible current, reforming seconds later behind him as he stepped into the cell. Kira stared. How? The Ancient One. His voice was rough, tired, but there was something new in it. Something that sounded almost like wonder. The Elder. She came to me after the council deliberated. She said she believes us. Believes me. Believes that the massacre wasn't my choice. He crossed the small space between them, dropping to his knees before her, his hands reaching out to take hers. She's the oldest living wolf, Kira. Old enough to remember the time before the packs fractured. Old enough to remember whispers of a darkness that moved between the bloodlines, turning brothers against brothers, corrupting the pure and destroying the innocent. She says she suspected for centuries that something was wrong, that the hatred between wolves and witches was manufactured, that someone was orchestrating the conflict from the shadows. And now, with your testimony, with what you saw in the hollow, she finally has proof. Kira's mind was spinning. What does that mean? For us? For the council's verdict? Draven's thumbs traced circles on the backs of her hands, a gesture so gentle, so intimate, that it made her breath catch. It means we have an ally. A powerful one. The Elder has agreed to delay the judgment while she investigates. She's going to search for evidence of this hidden master, this shadow that's been pulling strings for 300 years. But his grip tightened. That takes time. Time we may not have. Cashin won't accept the delay. He'll push for immediate execution. And there are others on the council who side with him, wolves who have lost family to the curse's rampages, wolves who want vengeance regardless of who is truly responsible. We're not safe here, Kira. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he'd entered the cell. He was exhausted. The lines around his eyes were deeper, the shadows beneath them darker. The black veins that traced patterns across his skin seemed more pronounced, pulsing with a rhythm that spoke of the curse still eating away at his soul. He had been fighting for her. Not just physically, though she suspected there had been that too, somewhere in the hours since they'd been separated. But emotionally. Politically. He had been arguing her case before the council. Defending her. Protecting her. Even though she had given him no reason to. Even though she was the descendant of his curse makers. Even though she held the power to either save him or destroy him forever. Why did you stay? The question left Draven's lips before he seemed to realize he was asking it. His eyes widened slightly, as if surprised by his own vulnerability. But he didn't take the words back. Just waited. Watching her. Hoping. Fearing. Kira was silent for a long moment. She thought about lying. About offering some practical explanation, because I need you to break the curse, because I can't defeat the hidden master alone, because our fates are intertwined whether we like it or not. All of those things were true. But they weren't the whole truth. And Draven deserved the whole truth. He had given her his. In the hollow, in the council chamber, in every moment since they had met, he had been honest with her. Brutally, painfully, devastatingly honest. About his crimes. About his curse. About the monster that lived inside him and the man who fought every day to keep that monster contained. She owed him the same. Because I couldn't leave you. The words came out barely louder than a whisper. Not because of the curse. Not because of the prophecy. Not because of what I saw in the hollow or what my ancestors told me or what I'm supposed to be. Because of you. Because when I looked at you in that clearing, when I saw the resignation in your eyes, the way you'd already given up, the way you expected me to abandon you like everyone else has. Something in me broke. And something else woke up. Draven went very still. I don't fully understand it, Kira continued, the words spilling out now like water from a broken dam. I don't know if it's the blood connection, or the curse linking us together, or something else entirely. But when I'm near you, when I touch you, when I look at you, I feel things I've never felt before. Not just the power. Not just the fire. Something else. Something that has nothing to do with magic and everything to do with you. The way you fight so hard to hold on to your humanity. The way you protect me even when it costs you everything. The way you look at me like I'm the first beautiful thing you've seen in 300 years of darkness. Her voice cracked. No one has ever looked at me like that. No one has ever made me feel like I was worth saving. And I couldn't walk away from that. I couldn't leave you to die alone in the dark, not when you were the first person who ever made me feel like maybe I wasn't alone either. Silence. Heavy and pregnant with unspoken emotion. Draven's hands were trembling where they held hers. His golden eyes had gone liquid, shining in the torchlight with something that might have been tears. Kira. Her name on his lips was a prayer. A plea. A promise. I have done terrible things. Whether I chose them or not, the blood is still on my hands. The screams still echo in my ears when the moon rises. The faces of the dead still haunt what little sleep the curse allows me. I am broken in ways that may never heal. I am damned in ways that may never be forgiven. I am a monster, even if the monster was made and not born. And you. His voice shattered. You deserve better. You deserve someone whole. Someone pure. Someone who doesn't carry 3 centuries of horror in his soul like a weight that threatens to crush him every single day. You deserve someone who can give you a future, not someone who's still drowning in the past. You deserve. I don't care. Kira cut him off with 3 words that seemed to hang in the air between them like a physical thing. I don't care what I deserve. I don't care what makes sense. I don't care about logic or wisdom or the 100 reasons why this, whatever this is, shouldn't work. What I care about. She pulled her hands free of his, raised them to cup his face. Felt the rough stubble beneath her palms, the warmth of his skin, the way his breath caught as her touch traced the sharp line of his jaw. What I care about is this moment. Right here. Right now. You and me, in this frozen cave, on the edge of everything falling apart. I care about the way my heart pounds when you look at me. I care about the way your voice sounds in my head when you're trying not to hope. I care about the way you fought for me in that council chamber, even though you had every reason to let them take me and save yourself. I care about you, Draven. All of you. The alpha and the monster and the man who's been buried beneath 300 years of pain. I see you. And I'm not running. Not now. Not ever. The last word had barely left her lips when Draven moved. His hands came up to mirror hers, cupping her face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so powerful. His forehead pressed against hers, their breath mingling in the cold air, their bodies so close she could feel the heat of him seeping into her frozen bones. You should run. The words were barely a whisper. You should hate me. You should want me dead. Every logical part of reality says you should be trying to destroy me, not looking at me like that. Not touching me like this. Not saying things that make me feel like maybe, just maybe, I'm not completely beyond saving. Kira smiled. It was a small thing, fragile and trembling at the edges, but it was real. Maybe reality doesn't know what it's talking about. Maybe logic isn't the answer. Maybe what we need, what we've always needed, is something that doesn't make sense. Something impossible. Something that shouldn't exist, but does anyway. Something like us. Draven's laugh was a broken, beautiful thing, more sob than sound. There is no us. There can't be. The curse is going to be broken. Kira's voice was fierce now, burning with a certainty she didn't know she possessed. We're going to find the hidden master. We're going to destroy him. We're going to break the chains that bind you and end the darkness that's been hunting us both. And then, she leaned closer. So close that a breath separated their lips. Then we're going to figure out what us looks like. Together. If you'll have me. The sound that escaped Draven's throat was half growl, half prayer. His hands slid from her face to her shoulders, down her arms, around her waist, pulling her closer, pulling her against him, pulling her into an embrace that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. If I'll have you, Kira, you are everything. The curse sings when you're near because you're the only thing that's ever made it quiet. The beast howls for you because you're the only one who's ever seen the man behind the monster. My soul, the shattered, damned, barely surviving thing that passes for my soul. It recognizes yours. Like we were always meant to find each other. Like everything that came before, all the pain, all the darkness, all the centuries of hell. We're just the path we had to walk to end up here. In this moment. In this cave. In each other's arms. Kira felt tears sliding down her cheeks, hot against her cold skin, falling to disappear into the darkness below. She didn't wipe them away. Didn't try to hide them. Because they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release. Of recognition. Of finally finding the thing she had been searching for her entire life without ever knowing what it was. Home. Not a place. A person. A broken, damned, impossibly beautiful person who looked at her like she was the only light in 300 years of darkness. I'm scared. The admission slipped out before she could stop it. I'm scared of what's coming. Scared of the hidden master. Scared of the curse and the prophecy and everything we're going to have to face. But mostly. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Mostly I'm scared of losing this. Losing you. Before we even get a chance to see what we could be. Draven's gaze held hers steady, unwavering, blazing with an intensity that seemed to light the entire cave. You won't lose me. Whatever comes, whatever battles we have to fight, whatever enemies we have to face, whatever sacrifices the curse demands. You won't lose me. Because I'm yours now, Kira. The same way you're mine. Bound by something stronger than blood. Something stronger than curse. Something that the darkness can't touch, no matter how hard it tries. And I will fight for it. For us. Until my last breath. Until the last beat of my broken, damned, impossibly hopeful heart. I will fight for you. Kira felt something unlock in her chest. Some final barrier. Some last defense. Some wall she hadn't even known she'd been maintaining. And she let herself fall. Into his arms. Into his warmth. Into the impossible, terrifying, beautiful reality of what they were becoming together. Their lips met. Not with the violence she had expected, not with the hunger of centuries of loneliness finally finding its end, but with tenderness, with reverence, with the careful, trembling gentleness of two broken souls recognizing each other for the first time. The kiss was soft, slow. A question asked and answered without words. Can I trust you? Yes. Will you stay? Always. Is this real? More real than anything has ever been. When they finally parted, foreheads still pressed together, breath still mingling, hearts still pounding in synchronized rhythm. The cave didn't feel cold anymore. The darkness didn't feel threatening. The fear didn't feel insurmountable. Because they had each other now. Whatever came next, the hidden master, the council's judgment, the final confrontation with the curse that had shaped both their lives. They would face it together. Two broken souls. One impossible love. And a future that, for the first time in 300 years, actually felt possible. The peace lasted 3 days. 3 days of stolen moments in the shadows of the Wolf Council's stronghold. 3 days of whispered conversations and careful touches, and the slow, tentative building of something neither of them had words for yet. 3 days of hope, fragile, trembling, impossibly precious hope, blooming in the space between two souls that had spent so long in darkness. Kira should have known it couldn't last. The universe had never been kind to her. Why would it start now? On the morning of the 4th day, the elders summoned them to the council chamber. The great hall was carved from the heart of the mountain itself, a vast, echoing space lit by torches that burned with blue-white flame, their light casting strange shadows across walls covered in ancient carvings. Wolves in various stages of shift lined the perimeter, their eyes tracking Kira and Draven as they entered, their expressions ranging from open hostility to careful neutrality. Cassian stood at the front of the chamber, his crimson eyes blazing with barely contained fury. But it was the elder who commanded attention. She sat upon a throne of twisted roots and polished bone, her ancient body seeming almost to merge with the seed itself. Her smoke-colored eyes were fixed on something in her hands, a small object that glinted silver in the torchlight. An amulet. Kira's blood ran cold. She recognized that amulet. Not from memory, from instinct. From the fire that suddenly flared in her veins, screaming a warning she couldn't articulate. From the silver light that stirred beneath her skin, responding to the object's presence like a compass needle spinning wildly in the presence of a magnet. The amulet belonged to her ancestors. It was part of the Ashwood legacy. And it should have been destroyed 3 centuries ago. The elder raised her eyes from the amulet to meet Kira's gaze. Child of Ashwood. Her voice echoed through the chamber, carrying the weight of centuries. Do you know what this is? Kira's throat was dry. She shook her head. It is a memory vessel, the elder continued. One of the sacred tools your ancestors used to preserve knowledge across generations. When a witch died, her memories could be stored within the vessel, captured like light in crystal, preserved for those who came after. This vessel was recovered from the ruins of Ashwood, buried beneath the ashes of the Coven's Great Hall. It has remained locked for 300 years. Until now. The elder's ancient fingers traced the amulet's surface, and silver light began to pulse from within the crystal at its center. Your presence here, the blood of Ashwood returned after 3 centuries of absence, has activated it. The memories within are ready to be released. Ready to show us the truth of what happened that night. All of it. Including the parts your ancestors chose not to share in the hollow. Kira's heart was hammering against her ribs. Something was wrong. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. She could feel it in the way the elder's smoke-colored eyes had gone flat and cold. In the way Cassian's crimson gaze burned with triumphant anticipation. In the way the wolves around the chamber had shifted their weight, their bodies coiling with predatory tension. This wasn't an investigation. This was an ambush. Wait. But her voice was drowned out by the amulet's activation. Silver light exploded from the crystal, filling the chamber, drowning everything in its radiance. The memories stored within poured out like water from a shattered dam, projecting themselves across the walls, the ceiling, the very air itself. And Kira saw. Not what she had seen in the hollow. Something different. Something worse. The vision showed Ashwood before the massacre. But not the peaceful village Kira had witnessed in the hollow. This version was darker. More complicated. The edges were sharper. the shadows deeper, and the truth. The truth was devastating. She saw the witches gathered in secret council, their faces hard with determination and something that looked horribly like hatred. She heard their voices rising in heated debate, arguing about the wolves, about the threat they posed, about the need for action before the packs grew too powerful. "They will destroy us," one witch declared, a woman with copper hair and eyes like chips of ice. "If we do not strike first, they will come for us. They will come for our children. They will burn everything we have built. We must be proactive. We must eliminate the threat before it eliminates us." The vision shifted. Now Kira saw rituals being performed, dark rituals, blood rituals, magic that twisted the natural order in ways that made her stomach clench with revulsion. She saw the witches reaching across the boundaries between worlds, summoning things that should not be summoned, making bargains with entities that should never have been contacted. She saw them creating something. A weapon. A curse designed to tear the wolf packs apart from within, to turn alpha against alpha, brother against brother, to spread madness and violence until the wolves destroyed themselves. And she saw who they chose to be the first vessel for that curse. Draven. Not a random alpha. Not an unfortunate victim. A target. Specifically selected. Specifically hunted. Specifically captured and violated by magic he couldn't resist. The silver-haired woman, the one Kira had thought was the hero of this story, stood at the center of the ritual circle, her hands raised, her storm-gray eyes blazing with power as she poured the curse into Draven's screaming form. "You will be our weapon," she intoned, her voice cold and hard and utterly devoid of the compassion Kira had seen in the Hollow's version. "You will destroy your own kind. You will tear apart the packs that threaten us. You will be the instrument of our survival. And when the last wolf lies dead, you will have no further purpose. And the curse will consume what remains of you." The vision blurred, shifted, reformed. Now it showed the massacre itself, but from a different angle. Not Draven's perspective this time. The witch's perspective. And what Kira saw made her blood run cold. The wolves hadn't attacked Ashwood unprovoked. They had come in response to an assault. The witches had struck first, sending their cursed weapon to slaughter a wolf village, to murder pups in their dens and mothers in their homes, to drown the forest in the blood of innocents. The packs had retaliated. The massacre of Ashwood wasn't a genocide. It was a war. A war the witches had started. A war they were losing until, in their final moments, they had transformed their weapon's curse into something else. Something that would punish Draven forever for crimes he hadn't chosen. Something that would eventually draw the last of their blood back to him, back to this conflict, back to a cycle of violence that served their purposes even in death. The vision froze on the silver-haired woman's face, the ancestor Kira had thought was a hero, the witch who had sacrificed everything to save a monster. But now she saw the truth in those storm-gray eyes. Not salvation. Manipulation. The final binding hadn't been an act of mercy. It had been insurance. A way to ensure that even if the witches fell, their legacy would continue. That one day, a descendant would return, drawn by blood and prophecy and carefully crafted fate. And that descendant would finish what the coven had started. Only the one who loves him can kill him. And only the one he kills can set him free. The prophecy hadn't been a path to redemption. It had been a trigger. A failsafe designed to ensure that Draven's suffering would end only one way, with his destruction at the hands of someone who loved him. The witches of Ashwood hadn't been victims. They had been architects. Of the war. Of the curse. Of every moment of suffering that had followed. And Kira. Kira was their final weapon. Bred and bloodlined and brought here by a prophecy designed to ensure she would do what they never could. Love the monster. And then destroy him. The vision faded. The silver light died. And Kira stood frozen in the center of the council chamber, surrounded by wolves who were looking at her with expressions of dawning horror. Not at the witches. At her. Cashin's voice cut through the ringing silence like a blade. "You see now. You all see. The witch doesn't want to save the Dark Alpha. She wants to destroy him. Just like her ancestors planned. She's been manipulating him from the beginning, using his hope against him, making him trust her, making him love her. So she can fulfill the prophecy. So she can kill him and claim it was an act of mercy. She's not his cure. She's his executioner. And she's been playing us all from the moment she arrived. The words hit Kira like physical blows. She wanted to scream a denial. Wanted to explain that she hadn't known, hadn't planned, hadn't. But the wolves weren't looking at her face. They were looking at her hands. And when Kira looked down, she saw silver light leaking from her skin. The fire in her veins had responded to the vision, had reacted to the revelation of her ancestors' true nature, and now it was burning bright enough to be visible. Silver flames danced across her palms, coiled around her fingers, licked up her forearms toward the scars that marked her as Ashwood's heir. She looked like a weapon. She looked like exactly what Cashin was claiming she was. No. The word came out strangled. That's not, I didn't know, I would never. But the wolves were moving. Closing in. Their eyes burning with the reflected silver of her own treacherous light. Kira's gaze found Draven. He stood frozen near the chamber's entrance, his golden eyes wide, his face a mask of devastation that she couldn't read. Was it betrayal she saw there? Confirmation of his worst fears? The final proof that trusting her had been a mistake? She couldn't tell. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Draven. His name on her lips was a plea. A prayer. A desperate hope that he would see past the vision, past the revelation, past the horrible truth of what her ancestors had done. That he would remember the moments they had shared in the cave. The promises they had made. The way she had looked at him like he was worth saving. The way she had stayed when leaving would have been so much easier. Please. Please believe me. I didn't know. I'm not here to kill you. I'm here because I... The words caught in her throat. 3 words. The most important words. The ones she had been afraid to say because saying them would make this real, would make it permanent, would bind her to him in ways that couldn't be undone. But now, with wolves closing in from all sides, with her own blood painting her as a weapon, with everything falling apart around her, what did she have left to lose? I love you. The confession hung in the air, silver and trembling and desperate. I love you, Draven. Not because of the prophecy. Not because my blood demands it. Not because my ancestors designed me to. Because you fought so hard to be good when everything in your existence pushed you toward evil. Because you protected me when you had every reason to let me die. Because you looked at me like I was the first beautiful thing you'd seen in 300 years. Because when I'm with you, I finally feel like I belong somewhere. Like I matter. Like maybe, just maybe, I'm not alone anymore. I love you. And I don't care what my ancestors planned. I don't care what the curse demands. I don't care what the prophecy says. I am not going to hurt you. I would rather die myself than cause you one more moment of pain. So please, please, please don't leave me. Not now. Not after everything. Please. Silence. Absolute, crushing, eternal silence. The wolves had stopped moving. The elder sat motionless on her throne. Cashin's crimson eyes were fixed on Draven's face, waiting, watching, measuring. And Draven. Draven moved. One step. Another. Another. Crossing the chamber with a deliberate, predatory grace that made every wolf around him tense with anticipation. Coming toward her. Coming toward the witch. Coming toward the woman who had just confessed her love in front of an assembly that wanted them both dead. He stopped in front of her. Close enough to touch. Close enough that she could see every emotion battling in those golden eyes. And then, slowly, deliberately, defiantly, he took her hand. The hand that burned with silver fire. The hand that marked her as Ashwood's weapon. The hand that every wolf in the chamber expected him to recoil from. He lifted it to his lips and pressed a kiss to her burning knuckles. His voice, when it emerged, was loud enough for the entire chamber to hear. I stand with her." The words detonated like a bomb. Cashin roared, a sound of pure, incandescent fury. "You fool. You damned, lovesick fool. She's going to destroy you. Her entire existence is designed to." "I don't care." Draven's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "I don't care what her ancestors planned. I don't care what the curse was designed to do. I don't care about prophecies or bloodlines or the machinations of witches 3 centuries dead. What I care about is her. Kira. The woman who walked into the hollow of echoes alone because I couldn't follow. The woman who stood before this council and spoke truth to power when lying would have saved her life. The woman who stayed when I gave her every reason to run. The woman who just confessed her love in front of an assembly that wants her dead, not because she was trying to manipulate me, but because she couldn't bear to let me doubt her for one more second. That woman is not my executioner. She is my salvation. And if loving her makes me a fool, then I am the most grateful fool in 300 years of history. Because I love her too. With everything I have. With everything I am. With every broken, damned, barely surviving piece of my shattered soul. I love her. And I will die before I let you harm her." The chamber erupted. Wolves lunged. Cashin shifted, his massive crimson form exploding toward them. And Kira. Kira made a choice. Not the choice her ancestors had designed. Not the choice the prophecy demanded. A different choice. Her own choice. The silver fire in her veins roared to life, not as a weapon, but as a shield. Light exploded from her body in a dome of pure energy, pushing back the attacking wolves, throwing Cashin aside like he weighed nothing at all. But she didn't strike. Didn't kill. Didn't become the weapon her blood said she should be. Instead, she grabbed Draven's hand, turned toward the chamber's entrance, and ran. They fled into the frozen wilderness, pursued by the howls of wolves who had made their judgment clear. The Dark Alpha and the Witch's Heir. The monster and the weapon. The two souls that had been designed to destroy each other. Running together into the darkness. Hand in hand. Heart to heart. Bound not by curse or prophecy or the designs of dead women, but by something far stronger. Something that no amount of manipulation could manufacture. Something real. Something true. Something that just might be powerful enough to break every chain that bound them. If they could survive long enough to find out. They ran for 2 days. Through frozen forests and over mountain passes, across rivers choked with ice, and through valleys so deep the sun never reached their floors. The wolves pursued relentlessly, a tide of fur and fong and fury that never seemed to tire, never seemed to slow, never seemed to give them more than a few hours of respite before the howls resumed. Kira's body was failing. The power she had unleashed in the council chamber had taken more from her than she had realized. The silver fire that burned in her veins was dimmer now, flickering like a candle in a windstorm, responding sluggishly when she tried to call upon it. She was running on empty. And she knew, with the cold certainty that comes only when death is close, that she couldn't run much farther. Draven knew it too. She could see it in the way he looked at her during their brief moments of rest, the desperate calculation in his golden eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands trembled slightly when he touched her face. He was preparing to do something. Something that terrified her. Something that she couldn't let him do. Don't. They were huddled in a cave on the 3rd morning, their bodies pressed together for warmth, their breath misting in the frozen air. Outside, snow fell in thick curtains, muffling sound, hiding their trail. Buying them time. But not enough. Never enough. Draven's arms tightened around her. "You know what I'm thinking." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Kira whispered. "And my answer is no." "Kira." "No." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes, those beautiful, terrible golden eyes that had seen 3 centuries of hell and still managed to hold hope. "You're not sacrificing yourself for me. You're not going back to face them alone while I escape. You're not doing any of the noble, self-destructive things I can see you planning. We survive this together. Or we don't survive at all. Draven's jaw clenched. You don't understand. The curse, it's been getting worse. Every day, every hour, I can feel it eating away at what's left of me. The visions in the council chamber, learning that your ancestors were the ones who created it, who designed it, who made me into a weapon. It should have broken me completely. But it didn't. And I think I know why. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone. Because the curse isn't just about punishment anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. It evolved, changed, became something different during all those years of searching for the one who could break it. It became a beacon. A lure. A way to draw the hidden master out of the shadows. Kira's blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying that the curse is connected to whoever truly orchestrated the war between wolves and witches. The one who gave your ancestors the power to create it. The one who whispered in their ears and fed their hatred and pushed them toward violence they might never have chosen on their own. The one who's been manipulating everyone, wolves and witches alike, for centuries. The curse is his chain on me. His way of controlling me even when I'm not in his presence. And as long as it exists, he can find me anywhere. He can find us anywhere. We're not being chased by Cashin's pack, Kira. We're being herded. Driven toward something. Toward someone. The words settled into Kira's chest like stones sinking into dark water. She should have seen it. Should have realized. The pursuit had been relentless, yes, but also strangely restrained. The wolves never quite caught up to them. Never cornered them completely. Always arrived just in time to force them to keep moving, to keep running, to keep pushing in a direction that neither of them had consciously chosen. They weren't fleeing. They were being guided. Toward the hidden master. Toward the true architect of 3 centuries of suffering. Toward the final confrontation that had been building since before either of them was born. Where? Kira's voice was barely a whisper. Where's he driving us? Draven's golden eyes closed. When they opened again, they were filled with a darkness she had never seen before. The Hollow of Echoes. He wants us back at the Hollow, where the boundaries between worlds are thin. Where power flows like water between the living and the dead. Where, if he gains control of your bloodline's magic, he can tear down every barrier that protects this reality from what lies beyond. They reached the hollow on the 4th day. Kira recognized the ancient trees that ringed the sacred clearing, their bark turned to stone, their branches twisted toward a sky that seemed darker than it should be. The mist that had welcomed her before was different now. Thicker. More agitated, coiling and writhing like something in pain. The pool at the clearing's center was no longer still. Its surface churned and bubbled, black water, if it was water, throwing off waves of energy that made Kira's skin crawl. The reflections it cast were wrong, showing things that weren't there, places that didn't exist, faces that she almost recognized but couldn't quite place. And standing at the pool's edge, a figure. Tall. Cloaked in shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Waiting. As if he had known they would come. As if this moment had been scripted centuries ago. He turned as they entered the clearing, and Kira's breath caught in her throat. His face was wrong. Not deformed. Not monstrous. Just wrong. Like someone had taken features that should have been beautiful and twisted them just slightly, just enough to make them unsettling. His eyes were the color of old blood, darker than Cashin's crimson, deeper, older, filled with a malevolence that went beyond anything human or wolf. And when he smiled, every instinct in Kira's body screamed at her to run. At last. His voice was the one from the vision, the cold, cruel voice that had commanded Draven to kill. 300 years I've waited for this moment. 300 years of careful planning, of patient manipulation, of slowly, painstakingly drawing the pieces into place. And now here you are. The cursed alpha and the witch's heir. The weapon and the key. Together, just as I designed. Draven's hand found Kira's, gripping tight. Who are you? The question came out through gritted teeth, every syllable carrying 3 centuries of accumulated fury. Who am I? The figure laughed, a sound like breaking glass, like screaming children, like everything beautiful in the world being slowly corrupted. I am the one who came before, the first wolf, the original alpha, the one who discovered that there were things beyond this world worth having, power worth claiming, if only I was willing to pay the price. I am the reason your kind exists, Draven. I am the one who made the first bargain with the entities beyond the veil. I am the father of all wolves, and I am the one who will finally claim what I am owed. He spread his arms wide, and the shadows around him swelled, expanded, reached toward the churning pool like eager fingers. You see, when I made my bargain, when I accepted the gift of the shift, the power of the Alpha, the strength that would make my descendants the dominant predators of this world, I also accepted a limitation. The boundaries. The barriers that separate our reality from the realm of pure power beyond. They exist because of me. Because the entities I bargained with insisted upon them. Because they wanted to limit how much of their essence could cross over, how much power could flow into this world. They wanted to maintain balance. I wanted to destroy it. And for 300 years, I have been working toward that goal. The war between wolves and witches? My creation. I whispered in the ears of your ancestors, little witch. Fed their fears. Convinced them that the wolves were a threat that needed to be eliminated. The curse they created? My design. Not to punish Draven, though that was a pleasant side effect, but to create a connection between the two bloodlines. A bridge that could be used to channel power from one to the other. And you, Kira? His blood-red eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her want to scream. You are the culmination of everything. The last heir of Ashwood, carrying power that's been refined across 3 centuries of careful breeding. The one destined to love the cursed Alpha, because love creates the strongest bonds, the most powerful connections. The one who can finally give me what I want. He stepped toward them, and the ground shook beneath his feet. Kill him. The command slammed into Kira's mind with overwhelming force, far stronger than anything she had felt from Draven, far more compelling, far more impossible to resist. Kill the one you love, and the power of that sacrifice will tear the boundaries apart. The love you feel, twisted into murder, corrupted into betrayal, it will be the key that unlocks every door. Kill him, and I will become what I was always meant to be. A god. The ruler of all realities. The end of everything that exists, and the beginning of everything that will exist after. Kill him, Kira. Kill him now. The fire in Kira's veins roared to life. But not in response to his command. In defiance of it. No. The word tore from her throat with a force that surprised even her, carrying with it a wave of silver light that pushed back against the shadows, that drove the hidden master back a step, that made his blood-red eyes widen with something approaching shock. No. I am not your weapon. I am not my ancestors' revenge. I am not a sacrifice to be spent. I am not a key to be used and discarded. I am Kira, the last heir of Ashwood, the woman who loves Draven of the Nightbane. And I am no one's puppet. Not anymore. Not ever again. The power rose inside her like a tide, the full inheritance of 3 centuries of accumulated magic, finally answering her call, finally responding to her will, finally becoming what it was always meant to be. Not a curse. Not a weapon. Not a chain. A gift. The silver light exploded from her body in a column that pierced the churning sky, that shattered the oppressive darkness, that lit the hollow of echoes with a radiance that hadn't been seen since the witches of Ashwood still walked the earth. She felt her ancestors rising within her, not as controlling forces, but as supportive presences. The women who had been manipulated into creating the curse. The women who had died defending their home. The women who had passed their power down through blood and bone, hoping that one day someone would arise who was strong enough to use it for its true purpose. Not destruction. Salvation. We are with you, their voices whispered in her mind. We were wrong. We were deceived. We caused so much pain, so much suffering, so much death. But you can end it. You can break the cycle. You can be what we should have been. The healer. The protector. The bridge between worlds that doesn't burn, but builds. Kira felt the power reaching its peak, felt herself becoming something more than human, more than witch, more than anything she had ever imagined. And she understood. The prophecy. Only the one who loves him can kill him. And only the one he kills can set him free. It wasn't a command. It was a choice. The curse could only be broken by an act of love so powerful that it transcended the boundaries of life and death itself. Not murder, sacrifice. Not violence, surrender. The one who loved him had to be willing to die for him. And the one who was cursed had to be willing to let her. To accept the gift of her sacrifice. To be broken open by the devastation of losing her. And in that breaking, to finally be free. Kira looked at Draven. His golden eyes were wide with terror, not of the hidden master, not of the churning darkness, but of her. Of what he could see building in her expression. Of the choice he could feel her making. No. The word was a growl, a plea, a desperate denial. No, Kira. Whatever you're thinking, whatever you're planning, don't. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. I won't let you die. I'd rather stay cursed forever than live in a world without you. Please, please don't leave me. Not now. Not after everything. Please. Kira smiled. It was the saddest, most beautiful smile she had ever felt cross her face. I love you, she said aloud this time, her voice carrying across the clearing, cutting through the roar of the hidden master's growing fury. I love you more than I ever thought I could love anything. More than life. More than fear. More than the future I might have had if I'd never walked into that frozen forest. And that's why I have to do this. That's why you have to let me. Because the curse can't be broken by violence. It can only be broken by love. Love so strong that it survives death. Love so powerful that it creates a new beginning from an ending. I am that love, Draven. I am the love that sets you free. And you. Her voice cracked. You have to survive. You have to live. You have to take the power that my death releases and use it to destroy the monster who made us both. You have to win. For me. For us. For everyone who's ever been caught in the crossfire of this 300-year war. You have to win. Promise me. Promise me you'll win. Draven was crying. Tears streaming down his face, his entire body shaking with grief that hadn't yet had cause to exist, with loss that was still only moments away. I can't lose you. Kira, please. Promise me. The two words cut through his anguish like a blade. And slowly, devastatingly, he nodded. I promise. I promise I'll win. I promise I'll destroy him. I promise your death won't be for nothing. I promise. His voice shattered. I promise I'll love you forever. Even after you're gone. Even when the grief feels like it's going to kill me. Even when I don't know how to keep breathing in a world without you. I'll love you. Forever. Always. Until the last star burns out and the last story is told. I'll love you. Kira's heart broke. And healed. And broke again. All at once. Then it's time. She turned to face the hidden master, the first alpha, the father of all wolves, the architect of 3 centuries of suffering. He was staring at her with something approaching disbelief. You think dying will stop me? You think a sacrifice will be enough? I've planned for this for 300 years. I've accounted for every possibility, every contingency, You haven't accounted for this. Kira raised her hands. The silver fire blazed. And she spoke, not with her voice, but with the combined voices of every witch who had ever lived and died and passed their power down through blood and bone. I am not dying. I am becoming. I am the love that breaks curses. I am the sacrifice that doesn't destroy, it creates. I am the bridge between worlds that you were afraid to let exist. I am the answer to a question you were too afraid to ask. What happens when love is stronger than hate? What happens when sacrifice is more powerful than violence? What happens when someone chooses to give everything, not for power, not for revenge, not for victory, but simply because they love someone enough to let go? This happens. I happen. We happen. And you. Her eyes met the hidden master's blood-red gaze. You lose. The light consumed her. Draven screamed. The sound that tore from his throat was not human, was not wolf, was something beyond either, something that existed in the space between grief and rage where sanity went to die. He watched Kira become light, watched her body dissolve into silver radiance, watched the woman he loved sacrifice herself for him, for the world, for a future she would never see. And something inside him shattered. Not broke. Shattered. Every wall. Every defense. Every barrier he had ever built to protect himself from the full weight of 300 years of suffering. Gone. And in their place. Nothing. Just emptiness. Just loss. Just the devastating, annihilating grief of watching your heart burn itself out for the sake of your soul. But Kira's voice was still there. In his mind. In his blood. In the very fiber of his being. I'm not gone, Draven. I'm everywhere. I'm the light that breaks your chains. I'm the love that sets you free. I'm the power that will help you destroy him. Take me. Claim me. Use everything I'm giving you. And win. For both of us. For everyone. Win. Draven raised his head. His golden eyes had changed. They were still gold, but now they were shot through with silver. With the light of Ashwood. With the power of the sacrifice that had just been made. The curse that had bound him for 3 centuries. Cracked. Splintered. Fell away like chains made of ice meeting the heat of a forge. And Draven freed, devastated, burning with grief and love and the desperate need to fulfill the promise he had made, turned to face the hidden master. You took everything from me, he said, his voice carrying the weight of 300 years and one shattering loss. My mind, my freedom, my humanity, my hope, and now you've taken her. The only thing in 3 centuries that made me want to keep living. The only person who ever loved me without condition. The only light in an eternity of darkness. You've taken her. And for that, the power that Kira had released, the power of love and sacrifice and a choice made freely surged through him. Silver and gold merged. Wolf and witch became one. And Draven became something that had never existed before. Something the hidden master had never planned for. Something that was stronger than hate, stronger than curses, stronger than 3 centuries of careful manipulation. Something born of love. For that, you die. The battle was not long. It was devastating. Draven moved through the hidden master's shadows like a blade through silk, silver gold light trailing from his body, burning away every darkness, purifying every corruption. The first Alpha fought back with everything he had, 3 centuries of accumulated power, entities from beyond the veil, the full fury of a god denied. But it wasn't enough. Love was stronger. Sacrifice was stronger. Kira was stronger. Even in death, especially in death, she was the power that turned the tide. When the hidden master finally fell, his body dissolving into the churning pool, his screams echoing across dimensions as the entities he had bargained with reclaimed what he had borrowed. Draven collapsed. The silver gold light faded from his eyes. The power that had sustained him through the final battle drained away. And he was left alone, in the hollow of echoes, surrounded by the fading remnants of the greatest love he had ever known. He should have felt victorious. He should have felt free. Instead, he felt empty. Hollow, like everything that had made him alive had burned away with her. Kira. Her name on his lips was a prayer. A goodbye. A promise. I won. Just like I said I would. The curse is broken. The hidden master is destroyed. The war that's been raging for 3 centuries is finally over. We won. You won. And I. His voice broke. I miss you already. I'll miss you forever. But I'll keep my promise. I'll live. I'll survive. I'll build something from the ashes of everything we lost. Something that honors your sacrifice. Something that proves your death wasn't for nothing. A future. a hope. A world where wolves and witches don't have to be enemies. Where love is stronger than hate. Where sacrifice creates instead of destroys. That's what I'll build. For you. Always for you. He closed his eyes. Let the grief wash over him. Let the tears fall. And somewhere in the space between worlds, in the realm of light and love and eternal becoming, Kira smiled. The pool had gone still. For the first time in centuries, perhaps for the first time ever, the surface of the hollow's heart was calm. No churning. No bubbling. No reflections of things that shouldn't exist. Just water. Clear and pure and peaceful. Draven knelt at its edge, staring at his reflection, at the man he had become, at the silver threads that now shot through his dark hair, at the golden silver eyes that held both wolf and witch in equal measure. He was changed. Forever. The curse was gone, but its echoes remained. The power Kira had given him, the love she had sacrificed herself to create, was still there, thrumming beneath his skin like a second heartbeat, keeping her alive in the only way that still mattered. He would carry her with him. Always. Every breath. Every step. Every moment of the future she had died to create. She would be there. His light in the darkness. His guide through the unknown. His love, eternal and unending, burning bright enough to illuminate whatever path lay ahead. The snow had stopped falling. Through the ancient trees, the first rays of sunrise were beginning to filter, not the pale, watery light of the cursed forest he had known for 3 centuries, but something different. Warmer. Brighter. Full of promise and possibility and the distant hope of spring. A new dawn. A new beginning. A new world. Draven rose slowly. His body ached. His heart ached worse. But there was work to be done. Promises to keep. A future to build from the wreckage of the past. He thought of Cashin and the wolves who had pursued them. Would they understand when they learned what had happened? Would they accept the truth that the hidden master had been manipulating them all, that the war between wolves and witches had been manufactured, that everything they believed about their history was wrong? Some would. Some wouldn't. That was the nature of change. It came slowly, painfully, one heart at a time. But it came. Eventually. Inevitably. And Draven would be there to guide it. To tell the story of what had really happened. To speak of the woman who had loved him enough to die for him. To make sure the world remembered Kira, not as a weapon, not as a sacrifice, not as a pawn in a game played by forces beyond mortal comprehension, but as a hero. The one who chose love when hate would have been easier. The one who chose sacrifice when survival was within reach. The one who chose to become light instead of wielding it. The one who saved them all. He walked out of the hollow as dawn broke fully over the forest. The world was silent. Waiting. As if reality itself was holding its breath, uncertain what would happen next now that the chains of 3 centuries had finally been broken. Draven paused at the edge of the ancient trees. Looked back at the clearing that had been the site of so much pain, so much revelation, so much love and loss and transformation. Looked forward at the path that wound through the forest toward everything. The wolf packs. The remnants of the witch bloodlines. The humans who had no idea what had almost happened in the hidden places of their world. Everything. All of it waiting. All of it possible. For the first time in 300 years. He was free. Free to choose. Free to love. Free to become whatever he wanted to be. And he knew, with a certainty that went beyond logic, beyond reason, beyond anything that could be explained, that Kira was still with him. Not as a ghost. Not as a memory. But as something more. Something eternal. Something that would never, ever leave. I love you, he whispered to the morning air. Forever. Always. Until the last star burns out and the last story is told. And somewhere in the space between heartbeats, in the light that danced through the trees, in the warmth of the sun on his face, he could have sworn he heard her answer. I love you too. Now go. build the future we dreamed of. And when you're done, when you've lived and loved and changed the world, I'll be waiting, always waiting, for you." Draven smiled. It was the first real smile that had crossed his face in 300 years. And he walked forward, into the dawn, into the future, into the rest of his life. So here we are at the end of one story and the beginning of so many more. Kira walked into the darkness with nothing but questions and the fading echoes of a life that never felt like her own. A hero, a sacrifice, a love so powerful it rewrote the laws of reality. And Draven, the monster who never chose to be monstrous, finally found the freedom he had been denied for 300 years. Not through violence, not through vengeance, through love, the kind that breaks curses, the kind that shatters chains, the kind that burns so bright it leaves an imprint on the fabric of the universe itself. Would you have made the same choice? If you had the chance to save someone you loved, even if it meant losing yourself, would you take it? Would you trust that your sacrifice meant something? Would you believe that love is stronger than hate, that light can exist in the darkest places, that broken things can become beautiful when they heal? Or would fear have won? Would survival have been enough? Would you have walked away? These are the questions that haunt us, the questions that define us, the questions that make us human or make us something more. And here, in Shayla's Romance Library, we don't shy away from them. We dive in, heart first. Because stories like Kira's, like Draven's, they aren't just entertainment. They're mirrors, showing us who we are and who we could be if we're brave enough to look. If this story wrapped itself around your heart, if you felt Kira's fear and Draven's desperation and the devastating, beautiful power of love that refuses to surrender, then you belong here. Hit that subscribe button and join Shayla's Romance Library. Because this world is full of stories waiting to be told. Tales of monsters who learn to be men. Of women who discover they were never as powerless as they believed. Of love that burns bright enough to light the darkest nights. Of sacrifice and redemption and the eternal truth that broken things, broken people, can become something beautiful. This is just the beginning. There are more cursed alphas waiting to be saved. More witch bloodlines waiting to be awakened. More love stories that will break your heart and put it back together stronger than before. Don't miss them. Subscribe now. And let us take you somewhere extraordinary. Somewhere dark and passionate and utterly unforgettable. Somewhere that feels like coming home. Welcome to Shayla's Romance Library, where the monsters are beautiful, the women are fierce, and love always wins, even when it has to die to do it. See you in the next story.